All right. Welcome back, everybody. Sports Chat 503. We are live. This is the week everybody's been waiting for. We got Juckonbucks in the building. We got Big Ten Ted. This is Celebrity Row. It feels like the red carpet's laid out. Gentlemen, how are we doing? First and foremost, I got to start with you, Juck. Look at the back row. I can't believe how filled in this is. Is there 1 inch of room to be able in the back behind you? Because I added something here, Big Ten Ted. Thought you might like this.
Let's go.
Yeah. Men gave that one to me at the last game. That's pretty good. But Juck, how you feel about this game, bud?
Bro, you know what? It's amazing. We talked about this game, I don't know how many times in the offseason, but geez, it's finally here. It almost doesn't feel real because there's been such buildup to it. And now I'm sitting here this week going, is it really that big? Should I tone it down? Like, yes, it is that big. I think it represents so much more in the conference for these two programs, for these two coaches, for these two fan bases. It's enormous. I love every minute of it. I'm loving all the drama that I'm creating over it. And we're having a heck of a time this week. How you guys doing?
Absolutely. Ted, what are your thoughts? What does this mean to the Big Ten right now?
This is a gigantic matchup this weekend, a top 3 matchup, and I am so excited to be with you again, Ryan. He kind of talked about, is it as really big as we all kind of think it is? It is and more. I'm really excited because I'm excited to kind of bounce some ideas off of you because I'm trying to go through the Pac-12 history of some pretty big games at Autzen Stadium, and I think this is the top of the list, right? There's that, if you kind of look at Oregon's history, throughout the years, some people have thrown out the term that they're a bit of a new blood, right? Really rose to prominence among Ohio State offensive coordinator Chip Kelly, right? That's just one of the storylines that can be woven throughout this game. And, this is going to be it. And that place is, I'm sure you're going to be there, right? It is going to be loud. Your voice might not be ready to go by the time you do your next edition of your program. So I'm excited for this one. And, when I'm starting to dive into these matchups, I'm so excited about some of them. The Ohio State O-line against that Oregon defensive line. Jordan Birch has been getting after it lately. Like, there's so many things to weave through. I might not make a prediction until I'm just about to hit the graphic of what the score is going to be. But when I do my preview, but yeah, I'm so excited for this one. And, considering what happened last week, Oregon kind of rises up in the rankings 2 versus 3. I hope it delivers all of our anticipation.
I agree. Okay, well, Juck, before we get too deep into this thing, if people don't know, where can people find you out there on the internet?
Yeah, Juckonbucks. I'm on Menace to Sports platform every morning at 9:30. Or you can find me at Juckonbucks YouTube channel for all my random stuff that I post throughout the week. And it's Buckeyes and all college football, really. Everyone's welcome. We have a great time. I got a lot of Duck eyes, a lot of Duck fans that come over every day. And they're great. My favorite fan base outside of Ohio State, which is another reason I love this matchup so much.
So good. And then Big Ten Ted, again, if people have been under a rock, where can they find you?
So it's really funny that you mentioned rock, and I'm going to explain why here in just a minute. But Big Ten Ted over there on YouTube, we've got a Spotify feed for you audio listeners, certainly as well. I'm trying out Instagram. I'm trying out TikTok for some vertical short form type of stuff. So we'll see how that goes. Don't expect me to do any dances anytime soon, but we're going to try it out over there. And as Ryan knows, visited the Washington coast, right? This is one of the few times that I'm going to say about Washington. And it is crazy just how symmetrical some of the rocks are out on the Washington coast. I just wanted to say that. I know you like to live on the coast, Ryan.
I do.
I just wanted to share that.
I love geology.
Back from Washington, I had my Rainier beer out there as well.
One of the greatest.
You got to have Rainier beer when you're out on Washington, out on the West Coast as well.
And Ted, I love how Midwestern you pronounce Rainier.
It's Rainier, is I don't whatever.
Rainier.
Yeah. I can't get the Wisconsin and Minnesota out of me. So, but yeah, I just had to share that for our fellow West Coasters.
Hey, and before we get too deep into the Duckies, man, cheers to those Gophers. What a good weekend for them, huh?
Huge win for them, and they kind of they spoiled the maybe two huge matchups, because if USC wins that one, that's a top 10 matchup between Penn State and USC. Look, it's still going to be a fantastic game, I think, between those teams. But yeah, Minnesota is Max Brosmer is starting to get under his feet a little bit. This was a team that was maybe leaning into the throw game a little bit more. They got back to the run game. Darius Taylor had nearly 150 yards on the ground. So Minnesota, I was there for that game when they fell to North Carolina, and a couple of missed field goals from the Big Ten kicker of the year, and then they played with Michigan and beat USC. Like, it's crazy to think how competitive that this team. Now, of course, Michigan is not the Michigan that they've been the last few years, but Minnesota going toe to toe with brands like Michigan and beating USC. Boy, that's got to say a lot, I think, about where PJ Fleck is taking this program right now. Of course, they got run off the field in that second half against Iowa, but he's got to be feeling good right now where Minnesota is at, and of course Washington able to beat Michigan as well last week. It was a fantastic prime time slot for the conference. Some really good games at night last week.
Well, I'm glad that the new brethren to the Big Ten is providing some good matchups for you guys, because it was a pretty good weekend. So, Juck, what are your thoughts early on about what the kind of the vibe is on the Ohio State side?
Very
Oregon, we're over the moon. It's like a bowl game, and it feels like everything's on the table for Oregon. They got to have all their cards on the table. What's it feel like over there?
Yeah, things are feeling. I mean, it's really positive, much more positive than I thought it would be. There was a little. So we just had a first half where it was 7-0 at halftime against Iowa, and there are some people who are a little concerned about slow starts, but I don't really consider that the typical Buckeye slow start that we've had in the past. We've had some troubles with those, but this one was a little different. They came out, the Bucks drove down the field, scored on a long 12-play drive, held Iowa to one first down, and we're really kind of cooking with gas the whole first half. They just had a turnover on downs, and then a fluke kind of fumble, and that'll happen. But I think overall they dominated the first half. I think they're clicking on all gears. I'm excited. I think that they are coming in. They've gotten a little bit better every week, and I think most people agree. The Buckeye meter is pretty optimistic right now heading into this game for most folks I'm talking to.
That's awesome. And Big Ten, Ted, what are your thoughts early on about what this does for the conference? We talked about how it's the biggest matchup. Looking forward, outside of rivalry week, is this the biggest matchup for the rest of the season, or is there going to be another big one next week or 2 weeks down the road?
Yeah, that's interesting, because if Ohio State is able to win this game on Saturday night, if Penn State takes care of business against USC, there's a chance, because Texas does play Georgia within that time, that we could see number 1 against number 2 Ohio State and Penn State a little bit later on, a couple of weeks from now. I think it's sometime in November, down a little bit further down the road in the season. So that's really the other big potential matchup, I think, out of all of this. And of course, even if Ohio State loses, that's still going to be a top 5 matchup, potentially, if Penn State certainly takes care of their end of things. But when you look at this specific matchup and how it really dictates the conference race, the winner is in the driver's seat, I think, the rest of the season. Now, I did mention that Ohio State game. They got to play Penn State right now. I certainly believe the Buckeyes, even though they would have to go on the road to Happy Valley in that specific game. I think both of these two teams are just a notch above what Penn State is doing. I think Penn State is playing really, really good, but you kind of got in the back of your head what James Franklin has done over time and really hasn't been able to get over the hump and win that big game, which that might be in the back of the head to some fans when they face USC coming off of a loss, and USC's back's against the wall, maybe more pressure on Penn State at this moment in time. But that's really the other game that you look forward to at the end of the season. But no doubt, I think that this will be the game of the year, right? I really do. I think these are the two best teams in the conference. They were at the beginning of the season. Now that Oregon is starting to get on a roll a little bit, and they figured out their issues up front on the offensive line, and that unit is gelling together. The defense is gelling together. I think there is no question that this will certainly be the game of the year. And I am so happy that this one's in prime time. I'm so happy that this one is on Big Ten Saturday night on NBC. It should be a great atmosphere. But yeah, I think the winner of this game has I'm not going to say easy, because there's never an easy game in this conference, especially in the mega version, the 18-team version of this league. But yeah, no doubt that I think whoever wins this game is certainly in the driver's seat to get to Indianapolis. Could get a little bit mucky after that for the loser. We'll see. There's some teams with easier schedules. We'll see if Indiana can keep rolling. Illinois is up there. Maybe, if they can continue to win, we'll see what happens with them. So there's still maybe the race for number 2, but I still believe the Bucks and Ducks are kind of in position to possibly meet in Indianapolis still at the end of the year as well.
What are your thoughts on that, Juck? What are your thoughts on the rest of the season for Ohio State after this game?
So, like Ted, I do agree. I think that the Bucks and the Ducks are both, a slot above Penn State still. I mean, they've been playing really good. I just have kind of what he's talking about. There's just always some hesitation, full on believing in Penn State, and I do think that they are going to have trouble heading out to the Coliseum. That's a game I'm really looking forward to as well. But as far as the Buckeyes, if they can go out and get this win at Eugene, then I am full on believing that there's something really different going on with these Buckeyes. All the changes that Ryan Day has made, his demeanor this week is even different. Just something about this team just feels different to me. And if they can go out and get this done, there's not a loss coming on this schedule for the rest of the regular season. I'm pretty convinced of that.
He looks rejuvenated to me. He looked very tired at the end of last year, and it feels like I think possibly just even having Chip there has really upped his spirits. And that game on the offensive side of the ball, it feels like maybe he doesn't have to carry the weight there. He
was very hesitant for a long time to give up plays, and to be able to do that and have no stress doing it, giving it to Chip, even maybe he might admit an upgrade, right? And he's even lost weight. Like, he's taking care of himself better.
Yeah,
he looks physically more fit. Everything about him looks better. And singularly focused, man. Everything just seems on point with them. They ask him questions. He's got an answer for everything. Like, it just seems so buttoned up. All the bases are covered. And the team, of course, a veteran team, they've got some chemistry around there that I just haven't seen in so long. The culture's great. We came into this year and a lot of people saying, if they don't get it done this year, then when? And I hate that kind of mentality because this is football and sometimes the ball just bounces the wrong way. But I'm starting to feel more like that because of the way this team interacts with each other, the way they gel, the way they are, and of course, the way they've been playing, which I'm sure we'll get into in a bit.
100%. And I just love their blend of youth and veteran at almost every position. They've got depth. They've got a real purpose. And you have to give credit where credit's due. The last couple of years battling with Michigan, the way they've done it, it's really set this thing up. This is a team of destiny, it feels like.
A little bit, man. A little bit. I hate to get too far into that, but gosh.
Well, but
when you love your team so much.
Though, right?
Yeah. When you love your team so much, you hate to think like that because you feel like, man, am I just setting myself up for a heartbreak? But
I think it's the same thing for the Ducks too. I think this is set up right now for the Ducks very well. They've been climbing. Each year has been better under Dan Lanning. The recruiting has come in. The transfers have come in. This is the time to really hit it. I do go into the history books fairly quickly since I'm a history teacher. That 2010 Rose Bowl against Ohio State, it felt like a similar type of team. That team was a team of destiny. It felt like the Ducks were just kind of rolled into that game thinking, all right, this is great. Our first chance to be here. Ohio State was on a mission. They were all about that business, and they took care of business that year. It feels like this Ohio State team is very similar. They are single-minded focus.
No doubt about that, Ryan. They really are, and they all freely admit it. Normally you see people kind of shy away from that talk. None of them do. They're 100% on the long-term goal of the national championship. Beating Michigan, of course, first, and that's what it is. But right now, it's all about Oregon. They put this week, they got a video board in the indoor facility, which last year every game they put up on the video board, beat whoever the opponent was. They haven't used it this year. I wondered why. Beat Oregon is up there today. The first time they've used it this year. So certainly it's a big game. It's a big deal for them. They've been looking forward to it. They all talked about it at their press conferences this week. And I saw Dan Lanning's press conference. He looks super serious. Boy, he's a grumpy dude, man.
He's gruff. I would say gruff.
Yeah.
Gruff. It's funny, it feels like there's times when he's very kind of engaging and warm. And then there's other times where he kind of buttons up. He's kind of got a little bit of a just a little bit of a thick shell with some of the media. He wants to give one-word answers if he can.
Yeah,
he's very gruff.
He intimidates them a little bit, I think.
Yeah, but to the fans, he's unbelievable. He's very, very open. He's a young coach comparatively to some of the older guys that maybe are a little bit more conservative on that level, but he's very open to the fan base and to everything else. I think Dan Lanning's the right guy at the right place at the right time right now for Oregon. We'll see what happens in the future, but everything's always changing. But right now, him saying that grass is damn green in Eugene was one of the biggest things that had happened out here. To actually have a guy who says, hey, he's actually coveted some other places and he's going to lock it down here and throw some roots down here, that meant the world to us. What do you call it? Oregonians out here, true Oregonians. I don't want to say native. I'm a history teacher. So yeah. But yeah, for us Oregonians who've been out here for a while, that really meant something. Big Ten Ted, what do you think about where this fits for the playoff? We talked about this over and over in the offseason, the possibility of these teams facing each other in a rematch or something. What would have to happen in your mind? We talked about Penn State possibly losing a game or two. Who else has to get out of the way to make this thing as a rematch opportunity? And can Oregon, you think, run the table if they do lose to Ohio State this week, if they able to find themselves back in that game?
Yeah, so I'm trying to imagine an imaginary bracket in my head. So I'm trying to work this thing out in my head. But I think the easiest situation is if whoever wins this game, Ohio State or Oregon, I mean, there's a world out there where whoever wins this game, say they win by 10 and Texas plays a really close game or maybe even loses to Oklahoma this weekend, that whoever wins is certainly the number one team in the country at that point. And then they go on to win undefeated. They win the Big Ten title. They're the number one seed in the playoff. Yeah. Now, remember how we're seeded, right? It's the top 4 conference champions. Get that bye. So then the highest at large would be that number 5 seed. And if this is a very close game and it's the only loss for whoever loses this game, there's a chance that that team is sliding into the 5 seed, right? And then, of course, the number 1 seed would play the winner. I think they could meet. It wouldn't be the quarterfinals. I believe it would be, because the 1 would play the winner of the 8-9. And then at the bottom of the bracket, the number 5 seed has a fantastic route in the college football playoff, especially if you're a member of a Power 2 conference, because the number 12 seed, it might not happen this year because Boise State could make a run. And there's a world where if Iowa State loses and the Big 12 cannibalizes itself, there's a chance if Boise State goes undefeated, maybe, just maybe, that Boise State team could get a top 4 spot this year. That's something I'm kind of keeping my eye on right now with the Broncos. Of course, you guys at Oregon know all about that, having played them this year. But there's a chance that these two teams could meet again in the semifinals, no matter how it shakes out a little bit later on in the season. So 3 times a possibility right now for both the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Oregon Ducks. Same could go in the SEC, right? So, it's very possible. It's very possible. I have a feeling that whoever gets that top at-large spot from the Big Ten or the SEC, that number 5 seed right now, they play probably the group of 5 team, even though I said maybe they could jump up. But let's say right now they play that group of 5 champion right there. And then they would advance to play the number 4 seed, which we're probably thinking is either the Big 12 champion or the ACC champion. We'll see what the ACC does. That's a favorable matchup if you're Oregon or Ohio State and you play someone like an Iowa State, even like a Miami. Certainly did not look impressive against Virginia Tech. They didn't look impressive against Cal and Berkeley this weekend as well. So that's a favorable matchup, and that's at a neutral site. Remember, the first round is on campus. The quarterfinals is at a neutral site. So the 5 seed has a very nice path in the current makeup of this playoff to meet up then with the potentially number 1 seed on the top of the bracket. So we could see that again, and it'd be kind of cool to see Ohio, whoever wins this first one, and then the opposite team wins in Indianapolis, and then we've got that ultimate rubber match in the semifinals. That would certainly be great to see.
I love the way that this breaks up. Again, just the idea of hosting a home game would be insane for the Ducks. And again, come off of a possible loss to Ohio State with then rebound it and host a playoff game in the first year of being able to host. That would be insane. Juck, what are your thoughts on playoff picture and seeding and everything?
I mean, for one, the first thing you're talking about, that number 5 seed, As much as you want the bye, you want your team to have the bye to get rested up. That sounds like so much fun to be able to host that home game. And especially when that home game is going to be against generally, maybe not this year, but usually a bit of a layup of a game. But I think that Boise, and this is something I've been talking about with a lot of the Buckeye fans the last couple of weeks is, we thought that Oregon started really slow, but what if this Boise team is a really good team? Because after that game, I listened to Dan Lanning, and his tone was much different than after the Idaho game. After the Boise game, it was much more like, there was not disgust. He was like, yeah, we played a good team, and it was a tough game, and we're happy to be out with the win. And now, obviously, they got chewed up for giving up all those rushing yards to Genty, who we now find out, oh, wait, this guy might win the Heisman. You know what I mean? So that was definitely a tough matchup. And we're seeing that this Boise State team may end up being that 12 seed. Who knows? Maybe Big Ten Ted's got onto something, and they might end up being the 4 seed with the way it's going in the Big 12. But
so
regardless, that 5 seed is an advantageous spot. But
so look at. Well, sorry about that. So look at where the rankings are right now. You've got Boise State at number 17 in the AP poll. Iowa State is sitting there at 11. Okay, you got Kansas State sitting there at 18. You got Utah sitting there at 16. BYU at 14. There's a chance all of these teams could get a lot of losses. If Boise State runs the table with their only loss coming on a last-second field goal or a late field goal against Oregon, sitting there at 11-1, they win their conference title game. They're sitting there at 12-1, and that it all depends on if the Big 12 cannibalizes itself. There's a route even right now where Boise State only 6 spots below in the AP poll from the highest-ranked Big 12 team. That Boise State is in a great spot to maybe get into that top 4. I mean, who would have thought that at the beginning of the season that we'd be talking? I mean, we're at it's October 8th. And we're maybe already talking about a G5 team getting a top 4 spot in the college football playoff. That's utter madness right now, but we got a long way to go. I think the more I look at the Big 12, the more I'm like, I think they're like Utah, we all thought would be that team, but I don't know. I don't know if they are, right? The way they've played this year, I haven't been totally impressed with the Utes as maybe that team that can. I mean, Iowa State, I watched them earlier this season against Iowa. It was they got 2 big plays. They went over the top, and beat Iowa 20-19. So, that's a nice win, certainly against the Hawkeyes. But they played them close against an Iowa team that's not great, So yeah, this is going to be really interesting to see how this thing all plays out.
Yeah,
I think you made a great point, Ted. The Big 12 is I was not impressed coming in. I thought, all right, you got quite a few teams that are all going to be kind of muddled up going into this, and it's going to be a really exciting race. And I think we're going to have that, but the teams aren't as good as I thought they were going to be. I thought Oklahoma State, K-State, Utah, and I thought Kansas was going to be pretty good too. Kansas is really disappointed, obviously, but that's going to be an exciting race. And the cannibalization you're talking about, I hadn't even put any thought into this, but you are on to something here with this, with the G5 potential of getting the 4 seed. That would be one of the more exciting things ever. And this entire season has been amazing. And I don't know about you guys, but I did not like the 12-team playoff. I thought you went too far. I wanted to go to 8. And I thought that it would devalue last Saturday. I thought that if a week like that came or some of those big upsets came, they would not feel the same way to me, and that would bother me. So that's why I was against it. But I got to tell you, Saturday came and went, and I got no less enjoyment than I ever would have. It was an amazing day, obviously, and I'm happy to admit I was wrong. I'm perfectly happy with the 12-team playoff.
Juck, you make an absolutely dynamic point there because I was in the same boat. I was kind of felt like I was the old guy in the room. There, you're changing the stuff that we've already thought of this. This is my old thing. Is that we've already done of this. We've already thought of this. Why didn't we think of this earlier and put it into place? That we already thought that was the better plan. But I totally agree. I was enthralled with last Saturday, and it was so good for me as a Duck fan because we played on Friday night. So we got to just sit there and just soak up all that college football. I watched everything. I couldn't get enough of it. And then went and played golf on Sunday when the NFL was on. Come on, what a weekend, man. Oh, the weather is holding out here. It's beautiful. But you're right. I do think there's something to be said that all of this has made it even more important. It's made it even, it's given even more credence to it. The fact that you got to play these games, even if you lose one, you're still in it, but you still got to play the rest of your schedule. Like I was hearing these guys on the radio today saying, well, one loss in the old system would have tossed you out. Well, 2 losses in the new system is going to toss you out, right? I don't know how many teams are going to be able to get in with 3 losses unless they're the best teams in the country. So I just feel like this playoff system has added more conversation, more eyeballs on it. And now the seeding is the big issue. And I kind of like the idea of that hosting the 5th seed. I'm a big believer in that. Even if you went to a 6th seed or 7th seed or 8th seed, I think all those teams that get to host have a huge advantage.
They do. Yeah. I do like the format. And here's the thing. It is going to have more fan bases, more interested later in the season. Like, how have we kind of gone about things when we get to November? I'll use a Big Ten example. Right. Ever since the East-West era began, and it went from 2014 to last year in 2023. Once we got to November, we're like, all right, we're counting down to this Ohio State-Michigan game. We feel like, hey, whoever wins that game, they're going to take care of business like they did for 10 straight years against the Big Ten West in Indianapolis. It was fairly a foregone conclusion the last handful of seasons in the Big Ten. Now, not only in a 12-team playoff, right, you're going to get more interest because now you got to be roughly a top 10 team, right? Whereas before it was top 5, maybe even some years where you get to the final weekends of the season where if you're a number 5 or number 6 team, there were some points where you're like, especially if you had a loss, where it's just like, I don't know, some years, not certainly every year, but it's, we sit in a position where I think there's going to be more interest from more fan bases down the road. And I want to take it one step further into the Big Ten. And I talked about this a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I can't exactly remember now, but not in the Big Ten with no divisions. Like, look at where we're sitting right now, where we're talking about Indiana could go 8-1 in conference. We're talking about Illinois could make a run. We're talking about, all of these teams. I said a couple of weeks ago, it's changed a little bit since now, but I think 2 weeks ago, I said that there could be 7 teams that could finish with 8-1 records or better in conference play. Now, that's probably not going to happen, right? That would be utter chaos, but I look at the schedules and it could happen. When we had a divisional format, and I know you guys in the Pac-12 had the divisional format there for a while, but in the divisional format, it was kind of predictable. And once you got into November, now in the Big Ten without divisions, it gets a lot more unpredictable. So teams are in the race to get to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game. And of course, they're in the race for some playoff games. Like, of course, I was born and raised in Wisconsin. I live now in Minnesota. 2019, the Gophers and the Badgers battled it out in the last game of the year, basically in the Big Ten West championship game. The winner went to Indianapolis. But that was a game between teams that were, I think, the top 12 certainly at the time. That would have been a playoff elimination game. Not, and in 2019, it was, the winner's going to get in, but they're probably not going to beat whoever they play from the East Division, the Big Ten championship game. Ohio State wrapped it up, I believe, that year. But, if we would have had the 12-team format then, now that game gets even taken to another level of how important it is. So you're going to have way more important games down the stretch. I like that. That's the part about this I like. One part maybe I'm not a huge fan of is the top 4 conference champions getting a bye. I kind of wish it was just the top 4 teams, because we just made a great example, right? We talked about Boise State.
I
they
like
could be
that.
ranked number 15 in the country, and there could be a Big 12 team that could be ranked 13th or 14th or 15th or 16th, and they're getting a bye just because they're a conference champion of a not great league, right? So I would rather have like the NCAA basketball tournament does. All right, let's figure out who gets in. If you want to have 5 automatic qualifiers, great. If you want to have 7 at large, however you want to do it, let's get everybody in, however it is, and then let's seed them 1 through 12 straight up. So that would be the only change I make. And I wish we had 2 rounds of on-campus games. I know the bowl structure, they want to get in there for those big matchups, but I wish everybody had the top 8 seeds, right? 8 seeds had a home game, right? I kind of feel bad for those teams. Well, I don't feel bad, but you get the general idea. For those teams that get the bye, I feel like they're missing out, and their cities and their communities are missing out on possible big-time revenue by having a neutral site game against somebody else. I wish that round was also on campus. So I know we're nitpicking a little bit, but overall, I think it's certainly added a lot of interest to the sport. And I think long-term, maybe the more traditional types, I think they're going to adapt to it over time.
Juck, what are your thoughts, bud?
So originally, what Ted is talking about, adding more interest to more fan bases, like I'd hear that argument and I'd say, okay, that's fine, but they don't have a chance to win. And I maybe still feel that way, but at the time I was like, I don't care, because they're just, like, let's say a 10, 11 seed, like they're not going to win. Usually this is going to be 1 through 4 going to win, maybe a 5 or 6 once in a while. And we're like pretending that these guys have a chance or whatever. Like that was my attitude. But seeing the excitement with Signetti in Indiana and like the Hoosier fan base, and like we could actually make the playoff. Like I'm enjoying it so much more than I thought I would. I thought I would not care about any of that. And maybe that was just like Ohio State snobbery. I don't know. I try to come at it as a college football fan first and not as a fan of my school when I look at things like this. Right. But I'm totally with him, and I'm 100% behind it. I also agree that these should be, and I do think eventually will be, all played on campus, because this is just silly that you got your top 4 teams who get this big reward, and the next 4, they get to play a home game. Like, hold on a second. What are we playing for? In addition, I would go a step further, not just, allowing the conferences to not get those buys, but the top 4 seeds to get those buys. But I would not have the automatic qualifier for the G5. If they can get in the top 12, you let them in. If not, I don't think they belong. I think it's a charity case at that point. And if you are good enough to get into the top 12, then come on, let's play. But other than that, yeah, I'm totally with them there on all those sentiments.
Yeah, that's a good. Oh, yeah,
go ahead, Ted.
Sorry about that.
That's a good point.
There was I'm trying to remember, in the old BCS format, if you were what they call it then, a mid-major, right? They didn't have G5 and P5 at the time. If you were a mid-major team, they used the basketball term. I think you had to be something like, if you were in the top, well, it might have been the top 12, that you got into a BCS bowl game, right? And if you weren't in the top 12, you were not guaranteed a BCS bowl game. I think, that's where the Boise States got in, maybe TCU when they were in the Mountain West got in with that. So that might be something. And we know there's all sorts of changes going on in the sport. The SEC and the Big Ten and their advisory committee are set to meet in Nashville, Tennessee. There's been rumors about a 14-team expansion to that, which would protect the Big Ten and the SEC championship game. So there's still a lot to figure out. And what do we know? The only constant is change in life and in college football. So I think we're gonna see all that. There's, could we see the 4-4-2-1-1 format where 4 teams automatically get in from the Big Ten and the SEC? So I like the 12-team format. I just wish, like I said before, I won't repeat that too much. I just wish there were 2 rounds on campus. But I think we're headed in the right direction. And like Juck was saying before, maybe it's kind of like in college basketball, right? When we go into the NCAA tournament, right? Like the past few years, yeah, UConn's probably going to win. All right. Yeah, Duke's going to be there, or some of these other teams, these historic teams, are going to be there. That's kind of how the basketball tournament. But we love watching Florida Gulf Coast go to the Sweet 16. We love watching some of these Cinderella stories. We love saying, hey, can this team pull this upset against this team? Boise State is going to be that team. In hockey, they say, can you ride a hot goaltender? Ashton Genty is like the equivalent of being able to ride that hot goaltender, right? If he can carry them, who knows what can happen? Like pushing Oregon to the brink, who knows what can happen at a playoff format? So I think it's access, right? I think that sells. I think that's a lot of where this is all coming from. And we talked about the interest before. So yeah, I'm excited to just see how it all plays out. I think there's a bit of unpredictability. I think a lot of people fall into that point where it's like, yeah, if you're not a top 15, you might not have much of a shot. But who knows? We don't know until it all plays out, which should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on the hosting the games. I mean, the cathedrals of college football are these stadiums that we know so well. And to give these teams just a gigantic shot in the arm economically, I mean, holy moly, the impact of just one more day of tailgating is huge for a lot of people in the local region. And then to bring eyeballs onto the campus. These environments, I've been to so many bowl games over all the years that we've gone, and the NFL stadiums are sterile. They don't have the same vibe. And I get it. Go to the end. You got to go to the classics. I would love to see, I've heard Kirk Herbstreit say that the Rose Bowl should be the championship every year. I would have no problem with that as a West Coast guy, of course. There's certain cathedrals that should be protected in this new system. And you should have those classic bowls still represented, the sugar, the orange, the Fiesta or whatever, still have a chance to be able to be played out there. But, of all the Fiesta Bowls we've been to, whatever, we know for a fact that it's just nowhere near an actual college stadium environment. Even with the band and the cheerleaders and all the fans there, it's still just it's a different vibe.
Ryan, I do 5 shows a week, right? All through the summer. And I want to tell you, there was a post that came out over the summer before the video game came out. And it was how the video game was ranking the difficulty of the stadiums. And that particular topic, talking about college football stadiums, was the biggest topic for a week amongst college football listeners. It's because we love the stadiums. It's part of the reason many of us fell in love with college football. It means so much to me. When I was young, I could name all the stadiums around the Big Ten. I had lists of ones I wanted to go and visit. They're all quirky and unique, and were built in an era by fans of your school long gone, right? And you look at a place like Ohio Stadium, and when I go there, like walking up into the rotunda just feels some type of way to me. A lot of Ohio State fans feel that way. A lot of other fan bases feel that way about their stadium. It's so different than these trash NFL stadiums. I have no feeling like that when I go to First Energy Stadium to see a Cleveland Browns game. You know what I mean?
First Energy.
None at all, So it's so much intertwined with the sport of college football that I just can't stand that we're playing off-campus games in the playoffs. But, I think that eventually we're going to find a way to get that changed. I hope, because I know a lot of people feel the same way.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love the idea of those first 4 getting a bye and getting to be able to rest and having some sort of an access point that's to them a benefit. But I've coached basketball for years, 20 years of basketball coaching. We've gone how many AAU tournaments where that first round bye, those guys get beat right out of the gate. They're the number 1 seed. They're the number 2 seed. They're the best team, but they've been waiting. They didn't get to get the momentum the first game. They get to get the legs underneath them. And I think there's something to be said about that, it is what it is. Welcome back here, Big Ten Ted.
I also want to say, Ryan, about that 5 seed, I think that Oregon has the absolute best home field advantage. If they can get in this playoff system, if they can get the home games, like I think that home field advantage in the playoffs is just different than anybody else has. And I can't wait to see our Buckeyes head out there and see what that's all about out there. I wish this would have happened a couple years ago, but time to make it happen now, man. I can't wait. I wish I was going. I'm not going, but man, this is going to be amazing.
Well, you can save a mortgage payment by not going. The crazy thing about a couple of years ago, it would have been canceled by the smoke.
That's right. You told me that.
Terrible wildfires. I mean, the air quality was so bad. People were evacuating. They weren't even in a danger of the fire. They were just in the smoke. So it was a crazy situation. Somebody bigger than us didn't want that game to happen. So whatever, we just have to accept it and move on. But yeah, no, this is, I think, the perfect game at the perfect time. I think both these teams are on a mission. I do think that Oregon has a really great shot at this one. As a coach, I always go in hesitant. It's ingrained into my coaching brain to not get over my skis on any game. But I like Oregon's chances in this to just keep it close throughout the game and not let the Buckeyes get away from them too much. And just as well as any of us, if you stay close in the fourth quarter, anything can happen. So I hope to really that it's just the Bucks don't go on some sort of a big run. They don't cash in some big sort of play. Everybody just kind of stays on schedule and we get an instant classic out of this.
I'll tell you, those two veteran quarterbacks, each throwing a couple boneheaded picks. The game right before this is kind of like, whoa, hold on a second. What are you two up to? But I watched Gabriel throw those, and then Howard came back and threw a couple boneheaded ones to himself. But it seems like Howard has a couple of those every week, not picks always, but a couple of like, what were you doing kind of throws. And I don't know. You tell me, is that something Gabriel does often?
I mean, I just think it's an overconfidence, really. I mean, when I went back and when I saw it in the stadium, I was just like, whoa, what? Whoa. It struck me as like, that was not the right read. When I went back and watched it on film, I just felt like there was an overconfidence. He said in the interview today that he got away with it at UCLA, but he didn't get away with it against Michigan State. And, that's, again, it's a weird one. Rolling to your right as a left-handed quarterback, throwing over to the corner. You don't really have that much on it. You're kind of throwing off your front foot, your back foot's up in the air. It's just weird concepts.
Yeah,
I do think that there's an overconfidence of these older quarterbacks that feel like they can tuck it in a tight window, or they feel like they can throw it away if they're getting trouble and they make a mistake, and all of a sudden it gets a pick six going the other way. And there's been some weird stuff we see in the NFL every week, and this is some of the cream of the crop quarterbacks that we can get. So I do think that Gabriel is very, very in tune with what the offense is presenting for him. So I think the offense I think Bo Nix was much more of an offensive coordinator on the field. I don't think they've given necessarily Dylan Gabriel the same ability to call the plays as Bo Nix did. Bo Nix would go to the line, see the thing, and then all of a sudden check out of it and do something else. He wouldn't even look to the side. I mean, and now we're not talking about doing signs or anything else. He's not even looking at the side. He's just doing his own reading. Doesn't mean he wasn't getting information from the sides. And Will Stein's also an offensive coordinator who's on the field. So it's not like they're doing direct relay. Now with the communication in the helmet, these guys go like this for 15 seconds, and then they go to the sideline, and then they look to the sideline for the last 10 seconds to do all the signs. So it feels like Gabriel's not making the calls himself. He's going to the line. He's seeing what they want to do. And then he's just doing what they're asking him to do, which is basically just dink and dunk, take a couple shots here and there. But when it stretches out and the play stretches out and it gets a little bit longer, it feels like he's got a little bit more of a green light to be able to do some stuff that maybe Bo Nix didn't do. And I think that the difference between those two quarterbacks, I also think that Bo Nix has an incredibly stronger arm. I think Bo Nix is a much stronger dude. I'll give you an example. I'm 6'2", 250. So when I go on the field and see these guys after the game with the offensive linemen, I'm up there with them. I'm banging around with them. I go to Dylan Gabriel and took a picture with him last week. And I like to take a picture with these guys just to kind of even get like understanding of where these guys are at. Dylan Gabriel's like down here. He's not, I don't even think he's 6 feet.
No, so I don't think so either. Yeah.
No. And that's fine. Jeremiah Masoli was 5'10". He was a littler guy too. But, comparatively, Bo Nix was like here. And Bo Nix was all of it. His shoulders, everything else. So just frame-wise, much bigger dude, much stronger guy. Gabriel can spin it. Don't get me wrong. He can really spin it. But I don't think he has that kind of just sheer strength to be able to force it into a tight window, NFL style. And the NFL scouts would probably agree. I mean, they don't rate him as high as they did Bo Nix from last year. So I do think there's a bit of a drop-off when it comes to the quarterback. And I think a lot of people expected this to just be, no problem. Just input this quarterback and everything's going to be just fine from the last 2 years. Maybe not the case.
That's 100% the feeling that I got over the offseason from a lot of the Duck fans that I talked to, is they did kind of think that because of everything we had heard about Gabriel, and honestly, he was really pumped up as the guy in the portal, wasn't out on the market. He was out on the market for a second, and then he was signed with Oregon. It was like, there goes the best guy. And I'm not so sure anymore, but definitely a competent guy, a talented guy. It's not just a plug and play. We got the new Bo Nix for this year, in my opinion, either. But what I want to ask you about is the offensive line. And I thought that this was going to be a really stout unit. It hasn't, I don't want to say hasn't. It didn't at first look like that. It has all of a sudden been looking a little bit better. And Michigan State, we saw some good downhill running from Jordan James. Line looked much better. You got the Poncho fella in, I heard, right? The Poncho, he's the big dude, right? Everybody's loving the Poncho. All right. So the running game's looking good. How are you feeling about that offensive line against the Ohio State defensive front? Because I think that matchup right there is going to be the story of the game.
Yeah, I think that's the game. I totally agree with you. I think that Ohio State's got a very stout defensive front. I think they put a lot of pressure on the quarterback in a variety of ways. All the film I've seen on Ohio State, they're comfortable going 4 rushing, 3 rushing, 5, 6 rushing, bringing guys off the edge, bringing safeties up, bringing a variety of different kind of pressures and exotic pressures, you could call it. But the offensive line for Oregon, I like that group a lot. And I have personal relationships with a lot of those guys and their families. I think that Josh Connerly, Johnny Cornelius, both check out as the tackles. I think the issue up front was in the middle 3. And I think it really wasn't about physicality. I think it was more about mathematics. And early in the year, they were being outrun. They were missing out on maybe the understanding of who should be on who. And then if that doesn't work out, who's the next level? It felt like they were doing just plan A instead of a possible plan B. And as an offensive lineman, everybody knows that your first option is only your first option for about 2 or 3 seconds. And very quickly it moves to your second option, whether that's another guy coming in or whether that's going down to the second level. And so when you're an offensive guard or you're an offensive center, an offensive tackle, you're not extending your blocks that long. Now the offensive tackles do, because they stretch those guys out a little bit longer. It's a little bit more of a one-on-one matchup. But the guards and center are looking for that double team. Oregon was pushing a lot of double team talk over the whole summer. I nerded out big time on the offensive line. Alik Terry, our offensive line coach, did a great job with Coach Tube, posted an hour video breaking down all their film, game film, practice film, talking about what they want to do in certain situations. And they were really heavy on the idea that you want to try to have a double team as much as possible and then run off that double team. Well, it felt like they were leaning into the double team more than they were leaning into the idea of single blocking and staying open to be able to catch an extra defender, because what was happening was they were being overloaded by their linebackers. They were being overloaded by the outside linebackers and the DNs, and Idaho of all teams were putting a ton of pressure on the quarterback very early. And we were like, whoa. Going after, from the last 2 years, Bo Nix got sacked 10 times, 5 in each year. And then all of a sudden now you've blown through that 5 sacks in the first 2 games. And so it was a real question mark. And Charlie Pickard was playing center. Poncho was playing guard. They got Shad Strother back for center, or for a guard. They moved Poncho back to center. And Poncho's a guy who I love dearly. I've had him on my show. He numerous times. Poncho's the guy. His older brother was on the team as well. He really, I feel like his relationship with Dylan Gabriel is really solid, both Hawaiian guys. But it was about the mathematics, and it was about getting the calls right, I feel like. And that was somebody just to take charge and be able to have good communication across the board, and then really understand what's our second play, what's our plan B. It felt like early on they didn't really need a plan A, and it felt like there might have been a little cocky going into that first game, thinking they've read their press clippings. It's the rat poison thing Saban talks about. They think that they can just roll the ball out and take over this team, and all of a sudden Idaho's got them in a game. And then they came into that second week where it was like, okay, it's Boise State, no big deal. We don't know that much about this team, that and the other. All of a sudden, whoa, we got to kick a field goal to win the thing. And so I feel like everybody was hitting the panic button without really kind of understanding what was happening on the field. Second half of the Oregon State game to now, they've been solid. Dylan Gabriel's got plenty of time in the pocket. It feels like they've all organized all their issues on the front line. Everything's good. Problem now is depth. And if you get an injury or two, maybe now you're in a different issue.
That is not, I feel like at this point in 3 years into the transfer portal, that pretty much is all the way around college football. When we talk about offensive tackles, the depth for Ohio State, we lose a tackle, it's big trouble. You know, we got a couple interior guys, but one of those tackles goes down. And to me, that is the other matchup that is going to define this game is right tackle Josh Fryer for Ohio State. If he is unfortunate enough to see Mr. Birch a whole lot, because if he does, he has struggled with athletic guys like him. And that might be a situation where there might be a little bit of an issue for Ohio State. Outside of that, on that side of the ball for the Ohio State offensive line, I see that I think that they'll handle themselves pretty well. But that matchup right there concerns me the most out of all of those.
Yeah. What do you think, Ted?
Yeah. That I think is the matchup. You guys talked about matchups that intrigued you the most. I think Boy, when you look at the lines, Oregon's defensive line against Ohio State's offensive line I'm salivating over that. As a Midwestern guy that grew up in the trenches, we know in the past, of course, how big of the trenches were in this conference. I'm really salivating over that because beginning of the year, I was asking, can this be a championship level defense for Oregon? And I certainly think that they've gotten to that point. It certainly looks that way with that defensive line up front. The Ohio State tackles are certainly going to be tested in this game. You guys were talking about Will Howard and Dylan Gabriel, turning the football over in some of these games. Dylan Gabriel at the end of the first half against UCLA, pick 6 goes the other way. Bruins hang around-ish within 3 scores for a little bit there after that pick 6. Ohio State against Michigan State, Ohio State against Iowa. I'm just curious is if the defenses are going to really zero in on trying to force some turnovers early, because you force turnovers against no matter which way the turnovers go, the other team is going to be able to capitalize. From the Buckeyes standpoint, Michigan State couldn't capitalize because I'm convinced that butter is on the football when Michigan State plays because they just can't hold on to it. Aiden Childs cannot hold on to the football right now. So there's that. And then Iowa, of course, couldn't do anything offensively, but it's going to be a little bit different this time around. You guys were talking about some interesting matchups. Oregon ran the football well in the first half, certainly with Jordan James against Michigan State, when maybe the pass game wasn't as explosive as we've seen with the Ducks. A key is also Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs is fantastic at coming in and playing the run, right, for that safety. He's almost another linebacker in the box, but you have an Oregon team where you creep him up, they're going to be able to take advantage over the top. When I did my Ohio State-Iowa preview, I'm like, yeah, just bring Caleb up the whole time. You feel pretty darn good about Denzel Burke and Davis Igbinosa on the outside in coverage against guys like Jacob Gill and Reese Vanderzee for Iowa. Little bit of a different story. So that chess match, especially with how they use Caleb Downs in this particular game, is going to be very, very interesting. And when you talk about turnovers, Caleb is a guy that's going to be, whether he's in the secondary, coming up in the run and maybe punching the football out, that's certainly going to be an interesting matchup. But really it comes down to that trench matchup for me that I think could really determine this one. You look to the other side, getting Tyleik Williams back in the middle for Ohio State, I think was a big-time factor in how well that they played on Iowa and their run game, right? Caleb Johnson was the second leading rusher in the nation coming into that game. You enter Tyleik in at defensive tackle, and you saw what you saw, and Ohio State played how they played. Now you look at this game, and you look at the interior that you guys were talking about on that Oregon offensive line. Can they really halt this Oregon run game? That's going to be another fun question as well. And one other thing I want to talk about before we probably pivot to something else is I think Oregon's linebackers are really playing well right now. Beginning of the year, you were looking at Jeffrey Bassa, you were looking at Justin Jacobs. Those guys were banged up. Now you bring in Bryce Betcher, you bring in Devin Jackson, and those guys have stepped up. And now what do you got? You got a lot of depth at linebacker. You got really good depth at linebacker, maybe better than what we thought at the beginning of the season. And that's secondary for Oregon. Good luck throwing the football. I am so excited to see some of these matchups. Who matches up consistently against Jeremiah Smith? How many big plays can maybe the best receiver in the country get? I know that is high praise for a true freshman, but that's kind of been the story with at the wide receiver position with Alabama's Ryan Williams as well, doing some big time things. I don't know how many opportunities he'll have to make some of those one-handed grabs because you got Jabbar Muhammad and company defending as well. So that's what I love about this game. There's so many just fun, interesting matchups. I know earlier in the season, I'm not sure if it stayed that way. Oregon led the country in passes defended, pass breakups, whatever you want to call it, right? So yeah, it's gonna be so fun to see all of these matchups.
Juck, where would you put this group, this Ohio State wide receiver group in the last 5-10 years of Ohio State? Because I know the defense right now is top tier.
Yeah,
but where would you put this wide receiver group? Because JJ is fucking amazing.
I think that he's so good. I think that he's so different that when you take him, and I do think at some point Carnell Tate is going to be a first-round guy, and I think that Emeka is a first-round guy, that when you add JJ, because he is so different, honestly, so generational. And the interesting thing is I had this conversation with a lot of Duck fans when I did a position break. So I did the position group breakdown, Ducks versus Bucks in the offseason.
Right.
Went through group by group, and I said, while I freely admit, this was at the time, that I believe the Ducks currently have this matchup as the better wide receiver room, that by the time we play, it's going to be Ohio State, because I think everybody is then going to see who Jeremiah Smith really is. I not only think he's going to start, but I think he's going to be dominant. Now, that wasn't some unbelievably brave call by me. We were seeing everything come out of camp, and we were seeing people who had been around Ohio State, covering Ohio State for my entire life, saying things they don't say. They try to protect freshmen, and they were just, I give up with this dude. Like, it's just too much. Expect whatever you want to expect. Like, yeah, he's that different. And I think he is. And I think we're just going to continue to see the amazing things that he does get better and better. And because of that, because of him, I think it's definitely the best one already.
I would agree with that. I just growing up as a kid, I'd always watch NFL like any red-blooded American male, and I couldn't tell you just how many teams were littered with Ohio State wide receivers. It always felt like from the 90s all the way through, you got just year after year after year, you had generational talent in that wide receiver room. And then now it feels like it's even getting better.
Yeah, it feels like every year.
Yeah, right, from a team that is so good running the ball, that they have such a great talent base in their wide receiver room. It's really an embarrassment of riches at this point.
It is. It's silly. You got a guy like Brandon Innes, who is a 5-star dude, and he's fantastic. He can't hardly see the field. He got 20 snaps last week. Got a great attitude though, and it's just like just the way that they've got these guys to buy in to wait your turn is something we don't see anywhere else. It's just not like that with wide receivers anywhere else. And that to me is one of the most amazing things about Brian Hartline, who I hate to bring up. He can't be around much longer. Like, at some point, this guy's going to go move on to the next step. And I know nobody wants to talk about it, but man, when he does, I'm nervous. Like, I'm really nervous, because it's been something that we just don't have to worry about. Like, that's just checked off the box right off the rip. Wide receivers, check. That's going to be great, Yeah,
absolutely. What are your thoughts on what are maybe some of the keys to the game here, Juck?
So for me, the Ohio State linebacker room has been, coming in from fall camp. We thought it was going to be one thing. It's turned out to be something else. We thought CJ Hicks was going to be someone who's been heavily involved, and said it's been a nice surprise, and a kid named Arvell Reese who's kind of jumped up out of nowhere. But the starters in the 4-2-5, our base defense, are Cody Simon and Sonny Styles. Sonny Styles, an unbelievable prospect who moved down from safety, and he has struggled in the 4-2-5. And it has been a big point of kind of concern as he has struggled. The kid below him, Arvell Reese, has played really, really good. So been a bit of a debate here. How much run should Arvell be getting over Sonny? Sonny's taken a lot of time. We got Oregon coming up. We can't be putzing around here forever. Well, last week against Iowa ran 12 personnel most of the game, and the Bucks were in the 4-3. And in the 4-3, Sonny Styles moves to the Sam, and he was the player of the game. He was amazing. It was unbelievable. But different list of responsibilities as the Sam. Now, against Oregon, he moves back to the base defense as the Will, and that right there is a huge key. How do Cody Simon and Sonny Styles at linebacker deal with this rushing attack of Oregon? If they can limit it, I think that the Bucks can potentially get more snaps get more stops than the Ducks, and in doing so, win the ball game. But that is an area that is scary to me. It's concerning to me.
Yeah, the Ducks have proven they can run the ball, and they're going to run the ball. They have to get their passing game working. I feel like they are a run the ball to set up the pass, even though they do like to throw the ball quite a bit. It feels like their run game half the time is an extension of their passing game is an extension of their running game. What do you think about the running backs catching the ball in the backfield? How effective has that been this year for the Buckeyes?
Pretty effective. Not something they go to the well a ton with, but both of them are really good at it for sure. These backs are just, I mean, they've been damn near perfect and so unbelievably all around when it comes to even pass pro. I mean, running physical, and how Locke coaches them. I mean, they're just the physicality, like even from a guy like Travion Henderson has just gone up like next level. It is blatantly obvious that they are being taught what he preaches, and they're really bringing it. And you can see it on the defense after the first or second quarter. Like they're getting worn down by these dudes, and it's just been clicking on all cylinders. What's going to be interesting is when they face their first little bit of pushback with Oregon, which we haven't seen yet, right? They've pretty much had their way, absolutely had their way on every opponent so far. Of course, we haven't played many tough opponents yet. It's been well documented and talked about it throughout the country, right? Although I think Michigan State and Iowa, both decent opponents. And if you'd have thrown in a Wake Forest instead of a G5 team in the beginning, and it was instead of 3, it was just 2 of them like everybody else plays, for some reason it would be perceived different, even though it would be no different because the Wake Forest is a crappy ACC team. Regardless, I'm interested to see how they react when things aren't running well. I'm interested to see how the coaching staff reacts when something gets taken away, because we haven't seen anything get taken away yet. They've done whatever they want to anybody they want, and that's what makes this so interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. Big Ten Ted, what do you got for some keys to the game? I don't want to expose all of your thoughts before the big video reveal, but what are some of your early keys?
Watch out for Oregon's tight ends. Oregon's got a pretty good group of tight ends. Terrence Ferguson, Kenyon Sadiq, and company over there. Juck was talking about the Ohio State linebackers. Very interested to see how that's going to get involved, because when you look at the secondary matchup for the Buckeyes, right, it's good on good, right? What they have over there at the corner spots, the nickels, the safeties, guys like that. And then you look at what Oregon has at wide receiver, right? It's just, who's going to win most of the matchups during a particular day. I'm very interested to see how the tight ends get involved for Oregon, because I think that's one part about the Ducks defense or offense, that just doesn't get talked about maybe as much as it should. Kenyon Sadiq is as unicorn of a tight end as I've seen growing up in the Big Ten. We've got a pretty good idea of what tight ends are supposed to look like. They're supposed to look like the Sam Laportas, the Luke Lachey's, like you see at Iowa, the George Kittles, guys like that. Bigger guys that can catch the football, that can move a little bit. But Kenyon Sadiq can get involved in so many different ways. So I'm excited to see how Ohio State defends the tight ends, how Oregon uses the tight ends in this particular matchup to kind of mix things up throughout this game. And, as much as we kind of go back and forth on this, it's all going to come down. I do not see this one being more than a 10-point differential in the fourth quarter. I mean, there's these teams are too close together, I think, for this to be a 2-touchdown type of game. Not saying it can't, but it could. Right at that point in the game, it's all going to come down to who makes some of these plays. Ohio State had a really close game against Notre Dame last year, and they just made plays down the stretch, and Notre Dame didn't. They were able to win late in that game on the road. We'll see if the Buckeyes can duplicate that a little bit, if it indeed certainly comes down to that. But I've kind of got an eye. I've got an eye on those Ducks tight ends in this one.
I think that's great points. And I think I'm optimistic about this game. I think it's going to be close enough in the fourth quarter to make this thing, like I said, an instant classic. I don't think any team is going to run away with it. If a team does run away with it, hats off to them. They're clearly the number one team in the conference, if not one of the number one teams in the country. So, again, I think this is set up for everything the way we want it to be, just like we expected it to be the whole time, the whole offseason, everything else. You guys have been here for an hour. You guys have absolutely crushed it. If you guys need to jump off at any time, please do. I'm here for another hour. But, dude, Juck and Big Ten Ted, you guys absolutely knocked it out of the park tonight. Any other thoughts we got before we get going here, Juck?
I'm losing my microphone. Ryan, I appreciate you for having me on, buddy. I'm so pumped, dude. I'm so pumped. I'd love to come back on or have you on and do our recap show after the game. so we can kind of go through how right or how wrong we were, and just kind of relive it. And I'd love to hear your story from the game afterwards as well, to kind of hear everything that went on with the environment, how many Bucks fans end up showing up. I think it's going to be a really cool story to talk about. How many nice ones you meet, because we're all very nice folks. And it's going to be a great time for sure. I'm sure you're going to have a great time, but appreciate it. Appreciate you. We'll see you, Big Ten Ted.
All right. We'll see ya. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, dude. Thank you so much, Big Ten Ted. You're the man. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. If you anything else in your final thoughts here, if you want to stick around, if you got to go, you can do it.
Maybe for I can maybe stick around for a little bit if you want to talk about
dude, I'm here.
Something else. But I'm just I'm excited for what this game, the showcase, right? That this is going to be. These are kind of the matchups when we looked at West Coast expansion in this conference that we really anticipated, right? Penn State and USC on the same weekend as well. These are the type of weekends. And beginning of the year, we all circled this date. We all circled October 12th for this matchup. And it's so crazy how close or how soon this has come. Man, it seems like I was just in the summer. I was just scaling freaking Mount Rainier, and I was just like, man, I was thinking about October 12th. And now I'm here, not scaling Mount Rainier. I'm scaling Sports Chat 503.
Ted, how good is it that you're on a family vacation in the middle of some of the most pristine wilderness? Everything is glorious, and you're thinking of college football.
I am.
You're hiking up the thing
I am. It's what gets me.
I'm in the same boat, buddy.
Yeah, it's and then when I'm at the top, and they said, hey, you can see Mount Hood from at the top of Mount Rainier. For those that don't know, you can see Mount St. Helens. You can see all these other mountains that I forgot the name of. But yeah, and I'm thinking, hey, Mount Hood, Oregon, and then all of a sudden, Ducks football pops into my head. Hey, I wonder if Oregon can stop the Ohio State run game on October 12th. Then I start thinking about that, and off we go, So it's always on my mind in some form or another, right? And it always has been, even before Big Ten Ted was an official thing in 2020. So.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about this then. Let's talk about what do you think the impact, big picture, is for these new schools coming in the Big Ten this year? You got 4 new additions. Yeah. How have they done so far? What do you think the impact has been so far?
So we've been talking about Oregon at nauseum, and they're good as we expected them. So I won't spend too much time on them. USC is one where look at their loss against Michigan. Look at their loss against Minnesota. That was the ultimate battle. Is USC going to be able to improve their defense enough, improve their trenches enough? Right now, hey, look at the game against Minnesota. Look at the game against Michigan. Right now, they're kind of steering into that, I don't know about the trenches right now. Minnesota ran the football really well against the USC Trojans in that one. Like, USC plays Penn State. Penn State has maybe the best pass rush in the Big Ten, if not the country right now. So that's going to be like, that's a bad matchup. I said beginning of the year, Michigan, it's a bad matchup for USC. That's the way I see it with Penn State. Like, look at that game and how it played out against Minnesota. They were able to get after Miller Moss, disrupt things, and then they were able to run the football. Penn State is just it's very similar to Minnesota, multiple notches up in talent, with Singleton and Allen running the football, with Carter and Dennis Sutton coming off the edge. Like, it's a similar model. It's just slightly above. So you look at that game. There's a game later against Nebraska. They have a really good defensive line. Look, their offense is not playing ultra well in Lincoln right now, but who knows? Where did we see Minnesota's offense coming into that game before they played USC? So USC's been on a little bit of a roller coaster, but I think this is so intriguing. Their backs are against the wall. What happens if they turn around and they beat the number 4 team in the country? Now all of a sudden they're back to probably 17th, 18th, maybe somewhere in there in the country. Yep. And now we're back to playoff talk again, right? Now we're talking wins over Penn State. We're talking about wins over LSU, and we'll see what can happen. The Huskies up north in Washington.
Pretty good weekend, Ted. Pretty good weekend for them.
Yeah, it was a very good weekend for them. I thought they played, they were the favorite going in to that game against Michigan, and I thought they played well. And I've been very impressed with the Huskies on defense. I think Steve Belichick has done a really good job. I think that defensive line, which was a major concern for Washington going into the season. I think that they've really proven that they've been pretty good so far this year. So their defense has been good, and their skill players, right? Will Rogers is one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. They've got two of the top three receivers statistically in the Big Ten right now at UW, and then Jonah Coleman's running the ball well. So this is a good team. I think that this is a team that can give a lot of people on their schedule fits, not saying that they can beat a lot of them, but they can give them fits certainly later in the season. UCLA is kind of that team that's, they had a tough schedule, this stretch with LSU, Oregon, and then Penn State. We knew that was going to be tough, but getting blown off the field the way they did against Indiana was, I think, the shocker for the Bruins. I wasn't necessarily shocked, even though I did pick the Bruins preseason to win that game. But it didn't shock me that Indiana could certainly go in there and win at the Rose Bowl. But the way they did it and just how uncompetitive UCLA was in that game, now you play Minnesota, who's coming off a big-time win. So that's going to be another difficult matchup. We know that this is a rebuild for Deshaun Foster. But if this thing goes pear-shaped and you're if you get to the 2-10 type of mark, what does that say about where this program is right now? I don't think it'll get to that point. I don't think UCLA is the worst team in the conference right now. I think they're slowly getting better. I like what I saw from Justin Martin, the young kid at quarterback this past weekend against Penn State. I like how they, I know Penn State was more methodical in the way they play football, but I was semi-impressed with, earlier on in that game, how UCLA was playing and maybe moving the football. So, I think the Bruins, I think they've got a long way to go. I think they've got a lot of developing to do. They need to continue to recruit well and try to build this thing back up. I think it's going to be a tough ask though in Westwood. I'm curious if Deshaun Foster, where he is as a head coach, what is he learning right now? Eric Bieniemy, right, as the offensive coordinator, okay? How are all these guys meshing with this maybe a little bit more complex offense that he's got from the Kansas City Chiefs? So, you throw all of that together, I think a lot of them, maybe outside of UCLA, I think they're all very competitive right now. Washington, maybe a tier below where USC is, and then USC maybe a tier below of where Oregon is, but I think overall they've brought a lot of depth to the league.
And you think Oregon is where you expected them to be going into first year of Big Ten?
Yeah, it is. Of course, just like everybody else, I thought, starting off a little bit slow was a little odd, and it kind of piqued my interest early on. But when they got it together against the Beavers, it's, they've played how I've expected them to play. Like, this was a team, Dan Lanning built this team to compete at this type of level. Of course, he built this team. Like, he learned a lot when he was at Georgia. He was on Nick Saban's staff, I think, for a year over there at Alabama, right? So the thing about Dan Lanning is he doesn't really have a West Coast mindset or a West Coast culture. He comes from, hey, in the SEC, we need to build teams at the line of scrimmage, right? And that's what translates to the Big Ten. Certainly as well. So, that's not overly surprising that Dan certainly has them. But the thing about Dan, and that kind of goes into this game, got to win a big game. We know that's been the one knock against Dan Lanning. And, and just because he loses, if he does lose this game, that's not a mark, so to speak, another mark. Ohio State is Ohio State, right? They are who they are. He's going to have another chance a little bit later in the season against a Michigan team that's maybe not what we expected them to be. But, hey, even if they don't beat the Buckeyes, they go 11-1. We were talking about that 12-team playoff. He's going to have other opportunities to win some big games down the stretch. But if he is able to beat Ohio State, I think that's a little bit of Dan Lanning maybe getting over the hump and get that monkey off his back of maybe not winning some of these big marquee games.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the whole – nation's eyes on the Big Ten and the SEC have gone up so much over the last 5 years or so with conference realignment and everything else. Yep. We're moving toward a time where that's really going to be the backbone of college football going forward. And if you're not in one of those conferences, you're pretty much going to be left out, it feels like. What do you think, though, for the end goal of the Big Ten? How many teams do you think are going to get in the 12-team playoff? We've kind of bantered around this idea of having two teams in those first two tiers, those first four and the second four. You think there's another team, Penn State maybe? I'm find their way into that third four.
Yeah, I'm hoping for four. We'll see if that indeed happens. I think what this last weekend taught us is there could be a lot more chaos. There could be a lot more chaos in college football. Look, I'm not saying that a 3-loss team is going to make the playoff, but if we get more weekends like this, we're staring a 2007 type season maybe in the face where we had all sorts of teams.
Don't say 2007 too loud around us Duck fans, buddy.
I know. Was that the year? Okay, I don't want to bring this. Was that the year the Dennis Dixon
baby?
Yeah, I weirdly remember watching that game against, I don't know why, but against Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona. That was it. That was the year we ended up in the Sun Bowl against South Florida.
Well, yeah, a team that was ranked number 2, I think.
As well, I think both teams were ranked number 2 during the year at some point. That was what they sold for the marketing aspect.
Oh, absolutely. I can see the promo. I can see the promo right now. Two former top 5 teams go at it in the Sun Bowl.
Live from El Paso. You're looking live.
So, I know. Yeah, but it's been really fun this year. And I'm so intrigued, and I think I said it during the offseason. Teams are going to have to restructure the way they think, with the more games and more wear and tear on players. And hey, just because we lost a couple of games doesn't mean we're out of this thing, right? So we are, as a college football universe, drifting more towards an NFL type of model, right? So you've got to be able to, what do we talk about the NFL? Getting hot at the right time. I mean, I'm a Green Bay Packers fan, right? I go back to 2010, where we were 10-6, 9-7, I think, and we won maybe our last 3 games to get that final spot. Go on the road, get to the Super Bowl, and then beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in Super Bowl 40. So it's going to be a similar type of thing where a team might start 2-2. Right. But then they run the table the rest of the way, and they're one of the hottest teams in the country going in, and then they get their shot, and then we'll see what happens. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So I got time for about one more thought here. And then
so who else are going to be the big matchups the rest of this year? We talked about the Penn State opportunities going forward. What are your thoughts on rivalry week? Will the Washington-Oregon rivalry live up to the hype that the Oregon State rivalry had for all the years? Is it going to be somewhere else? Is there going to be a dark horse team that's going to come up and rise up through the ranks? Is Indiana or Illinois? Do they have it in them to stay in the top 25? What do you think your predictions are for late in the year for those other teams, that possible 3rd, 4th window?
I'll tell you what. Smoke them if you got them. Curt Cignetti, man. I love everything that Indiana, and I love their fan base. They're getting hyped up. Everybody in the comments saying, you need to talk about Indiana. Oh, I'll talk about Indiana. That's a team that I got my eye on. Their schedule is favorable, right? Outside, they got to go on the road to Ohio State late in the year, but they get Nebraska at home. They got Washington at home. They get Michigan at home, right? There's a lot of home cooking at the Rock, and that's a stadium that now has started to see a lot more folks in the seats, talking sellouts now in Bloomington, Indiana, and there's a lot of energy around Bloomington. There's been the talking point that says, hey, maybe they haven't played the best schedule so far. One key game that I take a look at is next week. Both Nebraska and Indiana have bye weeks this week, but they're going to play on Big Noon Saturday next week, and that is the first really big test for this Indiana Hoosiers team. Nebraska's defense is playing outstanding right now. I think that's one of the best defenses in the conference. We know what Indiana is. They lead the Big Ten in rushing. They're a very balanced offense. Curtis Rourke is really good at quarterback for the Hoosiers. So that's a team, if they can beat Nebraska, I think that's going to be a little bit of a prove-it type of game for Curt Cignetti and this Indiana team. The next 2 games, they play home against Nebraska. They play home against Washington. Man, if they can win both of those games, both the Huskers and the Huskies are sitting in that also receiving votes category. So these are certainly respectable teams. So I'm watching out for Indiana. I'm watching out for Illinois. Illinois is another team. They lost. They were competitive against Penn State for a majority of that game on the road. a couple of weeks ago. They get Michigan at home here in a couple of weeks in their Red Grange game, the 100th anniversary of their edition of Memorial Stadium. There's a few Memorial Stadiums around the conference here in the Big Ten. So if they can win that game, now they got to play Oregon. So it's going to be tough, but with 2 losses, like if they run the table outside of those 2 losses to Oregon and Penn State, which could both be obviously playoff teams, Big Ten championship maybe type of caliber teams. Okay, if they play both of those teams tough and they win convincingly the rest of the way, this is an Illinois team that can maybe knocking down the door in terms of a playoff bid. So I'm looking at Indiana. I'm looking at Illinois. USC's got to win this weekend, I think, to stay in that discussion. If they lose, I think they're out. But it's kind of refreshing that we're talking about, hey, maybe Indiana and Illinois could take the spot of maybe some of these blue bloods like Michigan and USC, a little bit of new blood in the conference this year. So, those are some teams that I think I could, not saying will, could maybe, have the schedule and have the personnel to be able to turn it around and maybe put together a playoff run right now. So, but I feel very confident in those 3, Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State, that they're going to be playoff teams by the end of this year.
I agree with you completely. Alabama, it's good for college football if Alabama's good, but it's also great for college football if Alabama loses to Vanderbilt.
Okay, one last thing before I go. Look, and I know that's a saying that people, hey, college football's great when is good. But college football's great no matter what week it is. Like, look what happened last week where Vanderbilt, Minnesota, and Washington all pull upsets over blue blood Alabama and Michigan and USC. I know I'm missing one in there somewhere. Well, Arkansas beating Tennessee. That's why we love the sport. We love the sport because of its unpredictability. When you put 18 to 23-year-olds on a football field, that they make mistakes. Let's be honest with you. Them and their ability to maybe not be as developed and making those mistakes is what makes the sport so fun and interesting. You don't get that in the NFL. You don't get these wacky finishes, right? I remember an LSU game multiple years ago. Remember that fake field goal, catches it, throws it over the shoulder. Like, you don't see that in the NFL. You don't see there's no sickos committee in the NFL. That's why we love this thing. You're not going to have an Iowa team like we've seen the last few. You're not going to see that in the NFL where a team is going 10-2, where the quarterback can barely throw it 10 yards. You don't see that. That's why we love the sport. So, I see that. I hear that argument. But, if Minnesota's going 11 wins like they did in 2019, college football's great. If Michigan's going 15-0 like they did last year, college football's great. So college football's great. I think no matter what. Playoff doesn't matter. So
I would agree. And the statement being that you gotta have the cream of the crop. You gotta have the blue bloods to be able to have some of these weekends where you get them to be knocked off, right? You got to have a little bit of column A for a little bit of column B.
Yeah, I get that. I understand it. It helps draw interest. They have bigger fan bases, bigger ratings. I understand that. And yes, to a degree, it certainly helps draw a lot more interest. So when an upset does happen, there's certainly that's what makes it a bigger deal, right? If Vanderbilt goes out and beats whoever, like Ole Miss is good this year, but are they a blue blood? No. What's their following? If Vanderbilt and Ole Miss play, it's not going to be as highly rated as Georgia and Vandy or Alabama and Vandy. So all due respect to the Rebels, of course, but so that does help. And you mix it all together in a pot, you put it in the oven. What comes out? A pretty great a pie.
A pie.
So that's what we love about the sport. That's what drew me to the sport. Okay, I remember growing up in the state of Wisconsin, right? Wisconsin's playing Purdue. Purdue's ranked in the top 10. Hey, folks on the West Coast, that happened.
It did.
Purdue was a good football team at one time.
Yes.
Okay.
It was. Baby.
Kyle Orton, okay, remember him? He played quarterback at Purdue. He rolls out. They were up by this was 2006, I think. They were up by 6 points, 6 points. I forgot how many points. It was less than a touchdown. And then he goes and he runs out of the pocket and he dives for the first down for some reason. He gets helicoptered. Scott Starts of Wisconsin picks it up and takes it to the house. And Purdue was never really the same ever since then. They kind of went on a tailspin. So that's why we love this thing. We love the craziness. But we also love some of these big matchups, right? That's why we're here. That's why we're here, this Oregon and Ohio State matchup. So, Ryan, I want to thank you for having me on. It's always great. It's always great to be here. I've already been kicking around ideas for next year's summer, and the Oregon Coast is on. It's on the hot list. It's one of the hats on the table. Let's just put it that way.
We need to connect. It's a need issue at that point.
Yeah. So I've been doing a lot more research. You guys got a beautiful state, man. You guys got a beautiful state.
Hey, buddy, that's why we don't leave. Any of the people who move out here, they don't leave.
Yeah, I know.
The good run to do, just to give you a quick one, is if you fly into PDX, you can do an hour to the mountain or an hour and a half to the mountain. You can do 2 hours to the beach. You can ride the whole beach down. You can stay at a variety of different places there. The valleys are great. The wineries are great. It's like France over here. It's the same climate. Okay. On the western side of the Cascades, it is unbelievable in the summertime. There's literally not a bad day in the summertime. So
yeah,
I'd love to have you out here.
Like I said, I've put in some research, and you said a word there that I don't understand. Fly. I don't fly. I drive. I want to see the country. I don't want to fly over Montana. I want to drive through the Badlands and see the beauty of this country.
Well, then in that case, you're going to want to come in to La Grande and hang out a little bit in the Strawberry Mountain Range, which is the original. I know you might be a geology guy like myself. The original island chain before even the North America was even constructed out here. But the oldest rock we have in Oregon, the Strawberry Mountain Foundation, and then beautiful run through John Day, go through the Columbia River, or maybe just shoot it straight to Crater Lake. Just go right to Bend and go right to Crater Lake and go see the majesty of Crater Lake.
Would be
their only national park.
That'd be certainly on the that's one of the there's a mountain range, and I'm having trouble finding it. But one thing that really caught my interest was a mountain range in let's see if I get my directions, the northeast corner of the state. I forgot the name of it.
The Blues, the Blue
Wallowas.
The Wallowa.
Wallowa. I knew I'd pronounce that wrong.
Dude, no, that's like
the Wallowa.
Yeah,
let me get my bag.
Yeah, go look up the Painted Hills.
Yeah, I've looked. I looked up.
Oh, baby, yeah. Now we're talking. Now we're doing some real Oregon stuff. I like this. Basically, Ted, get yourself a covered wagon. Get yourself some oxen. Load up on as much ammo as you need. Get in the covered wagon. Take that Oregon Trail out here, and you'll find yourself fine. You just might need to hit some rapids on the way. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. You'll make it. Just don't get snake bit.
Exactly. The one thing I really want to see this. The last surviving blockbuster in Bend, Oregon.
Bend,
Oregon, baby.
Yeah.
So, you drive. I'm mapping it out right now as we're talking.
Amazon says the Steens. The Steens are unbelievable. Absolutely.
You drive in, you camp at Mount Hood. What highway is this down here? 97?
97 will you right down to Bend. That's right.
Bend, you stop at Blockbuster. Right off 97, you find your way to Crater Lake. You go down to Crater Lake, you go down to Redwood in California, you come back on the Oregon coast.
Now you're talking. Now you're talking. You get to go all the whole area, because it's hard to cut. If you're coming from the Midwest and you come out to Oregon, it's hard not to dip your toe into Northern California, because Northern California is a very unique thing. I think it's part of the thing where they filmed the Star Wars or something in the Jedi land or something in the Redwood Forest. Yeah, so it's hard not to come out here and do some Oregon stuff, but also dip on down to Southern Oregon. Tip your toe into Crescent Valley area down in there, and go down into the Jedediah Smith Park. That's baby.
Yeah,
Smith
I
River.
see a lot of comments here. Someone commented 97 is a gorgeous trip. Like, here's the thing that I love most about some of these trips. And I'm going to scroll back up to Washington. I'm trying to remember the road that we took. Highway 2 through the middle of the state. Yeah, through Leavenworth. I'm all about a scenic drive. I will avoid, here in Minnesota, I will avoid an interstate if it adds 5 minutes, 10 minutes, if it's a scenic drive. I will always go. And now I really hope you have the live chat replay on this live stream, because I see comments coming in, and I'm going to bookmark this when I do more trip preparation. So I got people talking about state parks and other things and highways and scenic drives, but I love doing the scenic drives. I love the scenic drive through Highway 2 through the middle of Washington. Out there like that. That's the best part. That's the best part for me.
Yeah, if you're on a
and
drive,
I will say this: the bummer about this, this is like this fall, of course, is a big time for me, right? It's where I sit down, I do all the YouTube stuff, and this is a big time, right? It's a great time of year. But the other time that I look forward to is the summertime. It's this week. Well, last year was this year's 2 weeks. And if I go to Oregon, it's going to be another 2 weeks. But here's the thing. Here's kind of the trade-off. Had an opportunity this last year to go to Big Ten Media Days in Indianapolis. And really the only time it works for me is during that time. But man, you can't trade. You cannot trade driving across the country. You cannot trade driving through Montana, driving through, people are going to laugh at this, but driving through North Dakota. I got engaged in North Dakota, and that was my first job in Fargo, covering the North Dakota State Bison.
Not with an S, with a Z.
With a Z. Don't go.
Come on.
Unless you're talking about the animals.
Come on.
Theodore Roosevelt National Park on the west side of the state. Unless you're talking about the animals, don't you dare step into Fargo, North Dakota, and say bison.
No,
just get out.
Lord, get out.
Bison.
Get out.
So that's kind of my spiel on that. But yeah, there's plenty of opportunity to do other stuff, but you got to take advantage of this stuff. When our short time on this earth, you gotta see as much as
a beautiful drive that is an interstate highway is I-84. As soon as it comes into the gorge, baby, it is picturesque. So if you can find your way to be able to come into Portland, come down the gorge, come down the Columbia Gorge, or on your way back out. It's also a nice one if you come down 97 and go Bend, then go Crater Lake, and then go Redwoods and come back up, and you want to go back out. I-84 from Portland's a nice little stretch because it goes all the way through the rest of the country. You can find yourself wherever you want to be from there.
I looked on, I think where Google Maps has me going. It has me going 94 through Montana, through Coeur d'Alene and Idaho. Learned how to say that this summer.
How about Coeur d'Alene?
What? Did I get it wrong again? I looked it up. I thought this summer. I thought it was Coeur d'Alene. Oh my god.
Coeur d'Alene. We do weird stuff out here, man. It's because the only people that came out west for the most part were insane. So the whole people who started, who's gonna take a covered wagon, Ted? Who's gonna leave? Who's gonna go behind oxen for months?
Anyway, it's got me going through whatever.
No, you're good, dude. You're good. Most people don't know.
Beautiful town, by the way.
People don't even know how to pronounce this stuff out here. They live out here. Come on, it's all good, man.
So it's got me going through that Spokane.
Rip through Idaho, go through the canyons.
Yeah, then I think after Spokane from 90 down to 82 and 84 to get to Mount Hood. So yeah.
Well, the Mount Hood, go down the east side of the Cascades is gorgeous, because if you go down the east side of the Cascades all the way down, and then you come up the west side of the Cascades on your way back, you've basically accomplished everything except for if you want to go out to the Oahe desert out in the southeastern Oregon, where there's literally nothing. You have to carry your own gas out there. You can do some opal mining or whatnot. But these guys are saying you got to get to the dunes in Florence. They're crazy. If you're a Midwest guy and you haven't spent much time on the beach, our Oregon beaches are tremendous.
Okay.
If I can put in a little plug, Rockaway Beach in northern Oregon coast. Come on up to Rockaway. I got you, Ted.
Rockaway. So here's the thing about the beaches.
That's my family's house.
By the way, this rock that I showed before, let me see if I can get it. How symmetrical. It amazed me.
Dude,
how symmetrical these rocks were on the Washington coast.
Years and years and years of just
okay. Let me tell you a story. While I'm holding up this rock. So there's huge trees on the Washington coast, gigantic trees that get washed up.
Spruce.
And we're thinking like, how did these trees, in Minnesota, we're used to, just sticks, and driftwood washing up on the coast of rivers and lakes and stuff, pretty normal. and then we see these huge trees, and I'm like, how do these trees get here? And I'm like, wait a minute. Are these trees from Japan? Do they come all the way across the ocean and wash up?
Dude, in the tsunami, it got weird. The tsunami brought all sorts of stuff over here.
Okay, so, but I later found out there are like rivers that flow into the ocean and then they get kind of washed back up onto shore is how most of these things happen. But I'm like, you know what? No, these trees are from Japan. That's what I'm going with.
Hey, you know what, dude?
Trees.
We had absolute chaos happen last year. We lost about 10 foot of dune coming in and going down. It was insane. We watched a log that had embanked into the sand for about 6-7 years. It's been there. We watched the tide take it out like nothing. And my guy who works in the Coast Guard says the tide, 1 inch of water picks up 1,000 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
And just see ya. It took this log. We couldn't even attempt. The whole town couldn't move it together. The Amish couldn't do it. And then all of a sudden the tide comes in. It's just a normal tide. We'll be taking that now. Thank you so much.
So here's
be careful out there now.
Here's what I will say about the beaches. I was, I'm not a huge beach guy here in Minnesota. We do it. I mean, it's Minnesota, right? I get it. Even though I think we have like some of the most lakeshore because we got so many darn lakes.
Of course.
Or shoreline, I think is
probably shoreline than anybody.
Yeah. So, so there's a lot of lakes. There's beaches. I'm not a big beach guy. That's just me. But man, I was so impressed. I had so much fun, when we're going to the beaches. There was one beach. I'm trying to remember. It was north of Ruby Beach. I'm trying to remember which one it was specifically. But people are just out there. They got a volleyball net set up on the beach. People are having a good time. They must like camp out there overnight on the ocean. I'm like, man, that must be the coolest thing ever. So I really love the beaches. I'm not a beach guy, but I was very impressed with the Washington beaches. Now I posted a video, a short video when I got back. I'm working on the full length one. Because anytime I go out to a vacation out west, I shoot a cinematic video with my camera and do all kinds of cool stuff. And I post it. It's usually about 10 to 12, 15 minutes long. So I'm working on that right now, getting really close. But yeah, I was very impressed with the beaches out there. But immediately when I got back and I posted the short version, I had Oregon fans in the replies, in my notifications, in my DMs. Doug Scott is there within like 10 minutes saying, Ted, Oregon's beaches are way better than Washington's.
Washington people come to Oregon for the beaches.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So seriously, I got you. If you come to Rockaway, I got you. Spend a day or two in Rockaway. I got you, my guy.
Yeah. So that's this was this came from Rialto Beach, which is outside of Mora, which is outside of Forks, Washington as well. Twilight territory out there, and it looked like a Twilight movie where it was all cloudy and rainy and all that stuff. So
now, did you get down to Claylock Lodge? Did you get down all the way to the
one? See, once again, I was pronouncing everything.
Claylock.
I was going to say Kalaloch, Kalaloch.
So you say KL, like Claylock. Claylock Lodge. Yeah, Claylock is actually from Claylock to Forks is 70 miles of untouched coastline.
Yeah, I did see that. You can start hiking at one of these and you can just hike straight through.
It's unreal. It's unreal. And that Olympic Peninsula, Hoh Rainforest, everything else is top tier. It is some of the coolest stuff in our entire country. It is so cool up there.
We did all of that. We did, we started in an Olympic and
Crescent Lake.
Yeah, we stayed. We camped on Crescent Lake, actually.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, dude. I took my honeymoon up there, Ted.
Did you? On Crescent Lake? Yeah.
Bro, I went to all the national forests up there. We went up to Victoria because I got married in the summertime. It's 100 degrees in Portland. We went up to Canada to cool off a little bit.
Yeah, it was something else out there. That was and there's so much variety. We go out to some of these parks. You go out to Glacier, you go up to Banff in Canada, and it's beautiful. Snow-capped mountains. You generally get similar stuff no matter where you go, but I'm going up there, I'm seeing snow-capped mountains up on Hurricane Ridge. In Olympic, I'm going down. I'm going to lake. I get some lake stuff. Then the mountains get a little bit more how do I say this? They're more green.
Yeah, they're
right.
Yeah,
They look like
no
big green hills kind of thing.
Rain-capped.
Yeah, right. And then you go to the rainforest, which was very unique out there, and then the coastline, and it was just everything was so different, and that's what I loved. It was very different from what we've done in the past, where it's generally one particular landscape, but seeing that all in one shot was pretty.
In the early days of Oregon, they wanted to market it as Oregon was the land of enchantment. It's got it all out here, man. We've got the high desert, we've got the lowlands, we've got the beach, we've got the mountains, we got it all. But I would love to be able to see you in Rockaway Beach or Lincoln City or Cannon Beach or Seaside or Deer Heart.
Is that where you film all your? Is that where you film all your Oceanside videos?
My family has a house in Rockaway Beach. My grandfather built a house in 1960. They bought the land for $325, mortgaged it $5 a month. We still have the original paperwork, and then he built the house. He built it by 64, and it's my family is an unassuming family. They're all school teachers. And my grandfather built the most expensive house he could afford, which is just a little cabin, but it is a time capsule. It's exactly the same. The only thing we've changed is a little bit of the kitchen, a little bit of the bathroom, and everything else, the knotty pine, everything's wood in the whole thing. It's a tinder box. You know how it goes. And Rockaway Beach is 7 miles of coastline. If I can do a little promotion for Rockaway, 7 miles of coastline with only 1,000 people live in the town. Now with tourism in the summertime, that obviously grows, but that Lincoln City is the other 7 mile coast, but there's 9,000 people live there on every other day. So again, the traffic alone. Come to Rockaway. Rockaway's got some great beaches.
Let's take a time out for a minute and talk about this.
Yeah.
In Minnesota, we have what I think is the best state fair. The Minnesota State Fair is elite, as PJ Flex says. Now, I'm looking at Rockaway Beach on Google Maps, and one thing that is prevalent and great at the Minnesota State Fair is the Pronto Pup. And I'm looking at a Google Maps listing, says the original Pronto Pup is in Rockaway Beach. Is that historically accurate, or is that a marketing?
Rockaway Beach claims that they invented the corn dog.
Oh my! I love corn dogs.
Okay, now it's a different type of corn dog. It's a corn.
It is. I know what Pronto Pup is. Yeah,
it's a corn. The Pronto Pup is a cornmeal pancake mix, basically.
Yeah.
And the way the story went was they sold hot dogs, and then the buns got wet, and they said, "Well, let's mix up this pancake batter." And then they threw the hot dogs in the pancake batter and fried it. And there you go. There's your Pronto Pup. I actually know the owner.
I'm looking at there's a little sign on Google Maps.
He's the son of the family that bought it from the original owner. I think the original owner started in 1938. His family bought it in 1951. They built the trailer that's still the same trailer from 1951 that goes to the Tillamook County Fair. Tillamook County Fair, Ted, if you want to talk about a fair, hilarious. Look up Tillamook County Fair. Look up pig and Ford races. These guys have a pig relay race. Get the pig under their arm. Start up the Model T Ford that they have to crank it. Get in the thing. Run the quarter mile dirt track. Switch out the pig. I mean, pig and Ford. Look that up, dude. This is some country stuff out here, Ted. These guys go crazy, and people fill the stands for the pig and Ford races.
I grew up in the country. I grew up in a town of like 700 people, so I'm all about that. I hate traffic.
They have demolition derby Saturday night that ends it. You know how it goes, Ted.
I hate traffic. I try to avoid traffic here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, at all costs. I wish I lived out in the woods in a cabin where I could just watch football and go hiking all day. That's my life.
Dude, there's a town on the way to the beach called Banks, Oregon. They don't have a demolition derby. They have a combine derby.
Let's go. That's that. Now you're speaking my language.
You can look this up. They have video of this.
I grew up on a farm. You could probably say, hey, you grew up in a town of 800 people. You probably grew up on a farm. So I grew up on a farm, and yeah. So we with like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois. That's combine territory, man. That is
heavy.
Corn. That's the Corn Belt right there.
That's it.
Yeah. I love maybe Oregon, because you see all around the Big Ten now at Iowa, Nebraska, Illinois. Hey, people with signs, our corn is better.
We grow
maybe,
corn. We grow corn out here. Hell yes, we do. We grow wheat out here. We grow corn. We grow weed, WEED, as in marijuana. We were early on that whole thing. We grow everything. We grow more potatoes than Idaho. Nobody tells everybody got the whole Idaho potato thing. Hey, Oregon, we grow more. It's the Idaho potato line. That's Oregon and Idaho. Ida.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
There you go. We invented the tater tot.
What? Okay, that's Oregon. Okay, so like that's favorite.
Ore-Ida came up with tater tot.
We'll call it my favorite guilty pleasure food is a corn dog. My wife's favorite is a tater tot.
How about both together? You guys are united in fried food. I love that.
We are. I think I think we're destined to one time live.
I would reverse it for my wife and I. I love a tater tot. I've never met a tater tot I didn't like.
I do like tater tots. Yeah.
My wife likes a corn dog. She thinks it's a vehicle for mustard. She loves it. She loves she loves a corn dog. I love a tater tot. We meeting now. You and your wife and we just need to connect. We need to eat some corn dogs together, have some tater tots, share some mustard.
I know, absolutely. So the more I research about Oregon, the more I love Oregon. So, but we'll see. We'll see. Like I went to Washington. I researched it a lot, and it kind of blew my mind. So
Washington is gorgeous.
Well, it is. I love, man, that was, it's, I've been fortunate to see a lot of stuff the last handful of years, the last 4 or 5 years, be on a lot of trips and stuff. And, boy, this Washington, that was,
I would recommend to anybody. And again, I'm a Portland guy, but I would recommend to anybody to go to the Olympic National Forest. The Olympic National Forest is absolutely out of
Absolutely. Yeah. People are saying I'm going to be a Duck fan. How do you know I'm not already a Duck fan? I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I love your hat, by the way. I like the green with the state outline.
I got this in a gas station.
Yeah.
It says Oregon on the back.
Oh, hell yeah. You got that gas station.
This is just gas station approval. Yeah. Look at the brand in here. The brand is Grizzly. Grizzly lids. Yeah, dude, I got the gas station, and they have an orange and black one. They have the black with the orange thing in here. Yeah. I got this one, the green one. Yeah, I love this, man.
So here's what I will say. Everybody's kind of lighting up the chat now after I said that. So Rick Olson chiming in. Ted needs the Pacific Coast Trail. I can say I hiked a segment of the Pacific Coast Trail when we were at around the North Cascades National Park. So it was like 2 miles there and back. Like we just did a short little thing before lunch. But I can say I did hike the PCT at least for a little bit. But here's what I like about the team. I'm talking about the team now because maybe I should end this talking about actual football.
We've been here an hour and 45 minutes, Ted.
I don't get. It's fine. Here's the thing. I could start people. You can watch me talk about football. I said that earlier in the show where you can find me, but I've always thought I'm like, man, I could just talk till I'm green and yellow. See what I did there? Green and yellow in the face about just traveling and their adventures and hiking and the parks. I could talk about that as long as I could talk about football. I could. But here's what I like about Oregon. I think their stadium is very unique. I think Autzen Stadium. I haven't been there, unfortunately. Yet I'm trying to, here's a little tidbit for subscribers over at I'm trying to get to some of these games at some of these stadiums to cover them, like I did the Minnesota North Carolina opener. So I've got a few stadiums in the Midwest. I'm going to try to hit the ones closer to me first and try to establish some relationships, and kind of get the lay of the land. It's maybe some local ones, and then maybe next year, maybe soon, maybe we'll head out to the West Coast.
I got you, Ted. I got you. If Minnesota comes out here and you don't get you can get a press credential probably with all your connections. But if
that's what I'm trying to do. That's
what I did. Press credential. You want fan experience? I got a seat right here, Ted.
That's next
to me, buddy.
I appreciate that. That's what I did for Minnesota. I shoot. So what I do is I shoot photos and I use that as my B-roll. So when do my post-game recap or whatever, that's what I did at Minnesota. If people want an example of that, they can go check it out. The Minnesota North Carolina game from earlier this year. But
Captain says it's a write-off, Ted.
It is. It is.
Awesome.
It is. We've got the business all set up for tax purposes. And yeah, believe me, that's taken care of. That's taken
Good.
care of.
Good.
Yeah, all the travel
Finances
expenses
are in
and all
order.
that stuff. So I love what they have from a stadium perspective. Look, it's around 50 to 55,000, but it's a very unique stadium. And of course, like I said, I haven't been there, but all I hear about is it is extremely loud and it is a fantastic environment in there. I grew up, of course, in Wisconsin as a Badger fan. They have a similar, like we have jump around. You guys have shout. Yep. Right at the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter. It's a similar-ish type of thing there. I love their identity with being the Nike school and being the uniform school. Here in the Big Ten, we're all about very traditional uniforms. Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State. It's all very solid colors, very traditional, simple helmets. But I kind of like the uniqueness of Oregon. I've always liked the uniqueness of Oregon. They were the first to really go out on a limb with all of these different uniform combinations. And I really respect that. I certainly respect that as well. I maybe with some more traditional Big Ten fans, I might be a little bit in the minority with that because a lot of Big Ten fans like the more traditional uniforms. Now, that being said, I really did like the uniforms earlier in the season where you had the O on the side of the helmet and were very green and yellow. I thought those were really good, but I did like the ones last week as well with the wing. So I really like that brand. That's a fun brand out there as well. So I think there's a lot to like about and Eugene. Like I like universities that are in college towns and maybe not bigger cities.
Yes.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Eugene seems like that type of community.
2 hours away from Portland. It's literally one quadrant of Portland. I live in Southeast Portland. Eugene is basically like just my quadrant of Portland, just my section.
Sure.
Yeah. So my zip code in Portland has half the population of Eugene.
Yeah.
Just the zip code I'm in. So that's just one zip code amongst all in Portland. So.
Yep. So. Like I grew up going to Madison a lot, and it's a college town. It revolves around the Badgers out there. And Eugene seems like that kind of town, certainly as well. And, the more I go, the more I travel out west, the more I like being out west. And Minnesota's got that, parts of it have a little bit of that field, but certainly it's a little bit different, certainly when you get out west. And I don't know, every time I go out there, I just want to stay out there. But unfortunately, I got a life to live here in Minnesota.
And that's fine. Minnesota is beautiful too, man. I mean,
it is. I do love. The hard part about that future conversation is I love living in Minnesota so much. I've just become accustomed to the forests and the lakes here, and of course, it doesn't have the mountains. It's as flat of a state as you can find. Really, you go more up north, and it's a little bit more hilly. But yeah. So, and there's not a lot of natural disasters, which is great.
You're stoked on that.
Yeah, I know. So
no hurricane season for you.
No hurricane. Depending where you live, you can get tornadoes. But I remember when I lived in Wisconsin, there was like one really bad tornado in like 40 years. And, and it was in a very small town. So, if you live in Nebraska, and you live in a really flat area of Iowa and all that, you're going to have a greater chance to get hit, but it doesn't happen as much as you might think. That's more of like Kansas and Oklahoma. That's kind of, what do they call that? Tornado Alley.
Yes.
Out there. You got to go a little bit more. It's like Oklahoma, they get a lot of tornadoes down there. So, but yeah, Minnesota's great. Go up to the Boundary Waters. I was not a big kayaking or canoeing guy. Went canoeing up and it's the most untouched, pristine waters you could ever think of. Right? It's just all paddling. It's all paddling. Go up there. Now we kind of went right off the highway, but there's just so many lakes. So you just portage your canoe from one lake to the next, and you go backpacking. You keep all of your gear inside the canoe. They do canoes instead of kayaks because you can keep all your stuff in there instead of a kayak. People do go kayaking, but if you're going to go from place to place, that's what the Boundary Waters is all about. So I would encourage anybody that comes to Minnesota to go check out the Boundary Waters. It's a fairly remote area. It's a fairly wilderness area. If you're going far enough, you're probably going to encounter multiple black bears, which is fine. which is fine. If you know how to handle it. I've been able to handle that multiple times. Got your bear spray on you. You do what you do.
Growl at them like you're a bear, or if you
you just don't run away. Don't run away. Bears don't eat people, regardless
don't
of
run away.
what some people might say. So, but yeah.
Well,
so,
what I've gotten really into is the inflatable kayak. There's a brand called Sea Eagle.
I've heard about those. Yeah.
Yes, and they're incredibly nice. I get the big one. They're really big. They it's a good brand. It's a good scene. I've enjoyed it tremendously. You can pack your gear on it, whatever else. But yeah.
Can I interrupt you for just a minute? I saw in the chat Rick Olson. I think he shows up in the comments on my stuff sometime. He's from EGF. Okay, so here's what I can say about it. Here's my connection to EGF. They have a tremendous high school hockey program. Okay? So my first job was in Fargo, North Dakota, KVRR TV. It's the Fox affiliate.
Shout out to the Fox affiliate.
And I was, I mostly covered the sports in Grand Forks, which is the University of North Dakota, not North Dakota State. That's UND. Their hockey arena seats like 15,000 people, which might not seem a lot, but they sell it out every single time. It is one of the best college atmospheres out there. And I covered a lot of East Grand Forks hockey. I know in Minnesota, we call them barns, right, where they play hockey. I like their barn. That's like their arena. So they got a great barn over there at EGF. So I had to make sure I saw that in the chat. I had to make sure I see that. So, I'm all about that area. Covered a lot of formerly fighting Sioux, now fighting Hawks athletics over there. So they're a football. I love their football coach. His name is Bubba Schweigert. Great guy. Spent many conversations with him over the years during my couple of years there. So got to give a shout out to the folks over there at UND. So
good, dude. I mean, again, Rick Olson's one of our absolute legendary commenters. These guys are the family of Sports Chat 503.
Yeah.
Sports Chat 503, La Familia. You want to go West Coast Hispanic Heritage Month.
Yep.
Good. But yeah, no, I mean, I can't thank you enough, dude. It's been 2 freaking hours, 100 hour and 56 minutes. You've absolutely crushed it. Again, I love what you do, Ted. I love your work. I watch your stuff. You're an expert. You do a great job. We should have more Big Ten Ted. When I watch Paul Feinbaum, when I watch other guys on the big networks, I want to see more guys like you out there because, again,
I'd be very curious. Who has been more right this year? Your boy. It seems like every time I hate First Take and I hate everything about it. I hate the concept.
Not a fan.
But I see clips come through because like an idiot, sometimes I have my Twitter feed on For You instead of following.
Oh, yeah. I just learned about the For You and following. I never even knew that existed.
It just switches it over sometimes. And then you got to switch it back, right? You got to switch it back. But anyway, I see Paul Feinbaum show up. It seems like every Monday or whatever on that show. And I'm like, every Monday he's saying, well, I was wrong about the right. Didn't Lane Kiffin call him out saying, what are you right about? So anyway, I would be very curious to, by the way, those are what you just had up in your comment. Those are 2 elite Oregon reporters right there. Mr. If he's talking about who I think he's talking about, Jay Hop.
Yeah, this is Max Torres.
Yeah, Max Torres and Justin Hopkins from Scoop Duck.
Yes. And Max is our guy. Max is a guy who I've had on this show since he was in the J school at Oregon. Shouts out to Max. Max is a local favorite here. J Hop runs the Scoop Duck out here. But Ruben right here is the CEO of Ranchito Grill. Ranchito Grill is the finest Mexican restaurant you're going to find in the Springfield, Eugene area.
We've talked about that here before.
Ruben is the man. And we have bantered about this idea of us all week. It was a tough time finding hospitality and hotels for the weekend because of Ohio State. We thought maybe we could all just stay at Ranchito. And so this kind of joke that we bantered about for weeks, months, or whatever was we're all just going to camp out at Ranchito, bring our sleeping bags, eat chips and salsa and flan all night, and wake up and hopefully everything's in order and, get out of there the next day and clean everything up on our way out. But yeah, as Mikey G just said, occupy Ranchito Grill. But yeah, so guys are in here right now asking about Ranchito. They're gonna do a party on Friday night. I will not be there. I am in Portland. I am coming down Saturday only for the game. I'm bringing my mom and my wife, and I can't leave. It's a major endeavor when you're bringing your mom to these kind of things. You can't be staying overnight with Madre. But yeah, it's gonna be awesome Friday night. If you are in Ted on your vacation, if you're in the Eugene Springfield area and you drive by Autzen Stadium for a pick, you need to head over to Ranchito Grill. They will take care of you. And Ruben's going to be at the game this week, the Ohio State game. The only tickets I could get were for Ruben.
Throw Crater Lake, throw any mountain range or the Pacific Coast. I'm coming to Oregon to head to Ranchito. All I hear about
handmade flour
is
tortillas.
Ranchito Grill.
And Max does an advertisement on his show for Ruben. So again, big fan. So let's go.
Absolutely. It's fun to come on this program to kind of, let your hair down a little bit. Like I said, go on a lot of programs, fairly buttoned up a little bit, talking about like I pretend I know what's going on here. I kind of let the look at that. We downed to Northeast during this whole program.
But Big Ten Ted, I'm at like 3 Coors Lights in here, people. I don't even know. Hey, actually it's 4. Let's just do the math correctly here, okay?
Can I count this Rainier beer? Sorry, Rainier. I need to get that right.
How about this one, Ted? How about this one? Go to YouTube, look up the old advertisement for Rainier beer. It was a motorcycle that went Rainier.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Interesting story about this.
That was it.
This was like the last experience that we had in Washington. So we're out on what's the other side? It was the sunrise side, I think, of Mount Rainier. Mount Rainier National Park.
Rainier.
And we hike up and we're just like, I think that's it. I think we did it. And we went into the gift shop area to kind of, just walk around a little bit. And they got these beers in there. And I'm like, we got to get one, right? We got to get one. So the last thing we did was just sit on the side of a ridge out in the mountain, have ourselves a little beer ski. And then we headed for home.
Those Cascadia waters, Ted. And so Rainier actually in the bottles makes the 16 ounces. So it's the full pint. And then we would always be drinking the Blitz Weinhard. Blitz Weinhard was the Portland beer. Rainier was the Seattle beer. And so we would always drink the Portland beer or the Seattle beer. But Rainier is phenomenal. Highly recommend it. It's very tasty. You can taste those Cascade hops. Willamette Valley grows a tremendous amount of hops. For the rest of the country. We're a timber state first. We're a grass seed state second. We're probably now a hop state third. If we could export the weed, we'd be rolling in this stuff. We just can't get. We have 1 million pounds of weed extra every year. What are we gonna do with this stuff?
Yeah, we've recently gotten into that.
Good luck with that.
You're in Minnesota, so
good luck with that. Yeah, we've tried basically everything on. I think we're just going to stick with the weed. We tried in Portland to just legalize everything. We saw that went after a while. Maybe want to tone that down a little bit.
Yeah, I got you.
Well, hey, Big Ten Ted, I can't thank you enough. La Familia, your Sports Chat family, bro. If you come out to Rockaway, we got you covered. We're gonna roll out the green and yellow carpet for you, my guy.
Oh my God, yeah, we gotta make it happen. We gotta make a trip out there. We'll see what happens. In late July. That's kind of the opening that I got during the summers, late July and early August. So we could maybe spend it another 2 weeks, this time in the great state of Oregon. So I would love to see Autzen Stadium.
Yes.
What we see on this year, we saw Nebraska Stadium, we saw Colorado, we saw University of Montana, which was one that I was able to check off my bucket list in Missoula, Montana State and Bozeman. By the way, Missoula and their stadium much better than Bozeman.
Beautiful
and
stadium.
Montana State Stadium. I love Missoula is more. Bozeman is very corporate. It's very new.
Yes.
It gives off the feel that a bunch of people moved from California and decided to just build their own city. Kind of a deal. Missoula is very college. It feels more Montana to me than Bozeman.
I had a lot of my friends went to U of M, and I spent a lot of time in Missoula. Very fun place. Old school bars, old school town nightlife, the whole thing, the little college town vibe for sure.
Montana is it's a spectacular state. Might be a flyover state for some, but got many
Montana's
stories.
Real deal, man. Montana's real deal. If you like nature, go to Montana.
And you're looking at it. You're looking at it. Man, I was gonna say we've driven through there so many times that it seemed like we've stopped at every gas station on the major highway now through Montana multiple times out there. But yeah, it's always fun coming on here. It's always fun talking. The Duck fans have been a fantastic audience. They've been very engaged on the Big Ten TED side of things, which I very much appreciate. It helps put more money in my pocket, which I appreciate. So yeah, it's been fun to engage with some of these fans here, get to know some of the podcasters and reporters like yourself. We talked about J-Hop and Max and Doug and QB and all those guys. They've all been
just tailgating with QB down in Pasadena.
Yeah, he said he was down
11.
there. Yeah. He said it was down. I talked to him offline about because he's like from Madison, or he has some connection to Wisconsin.
I'm not sure.
I forgot what it is, but yeah. So we talk about our mutual displeasure of Phil Longo. So if you've listened to the QB11 show, you know all about that.
There's a lot of good people out here doing good stuff, man.
Yeah,
and you're tapped in for sure. The 247 guys do a great job. Eric Scopel, Matt Preem, Jared Mack. Jared, my guy. I would try to have him in here. I like him a lot. But yeah, Eric does a great job. Matt does a great job. The tremendous amount of other guys out here doing great work. I did a round table of sorts at the beginning with the rival site. So they've was a Duck Sports Authority, I think it's called. Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Yeah, there's been a lot of
Scott Reed. That's my guy, dude.
Yeah,
Scott's now taking over, dude. Scott's my freaking guy. Scott goes to the Poly Bowl every year, and I would always have Scott come on from Hawaii, from the Poly Bowl. It was always one of the apex moments for Sports Chat 503 to talk about what's going on at the Poly Bowl. It's my favorite holiday, all-star game, whatever you want to call it, matchup, sort of thing. And yeah, dude, Scott now taking over Duck Sports Authority. He's done an absolute killer job.
Yeah, he got a hold of me. I think it was like a week or two after he took over, and he's like, "Yeah, you want to come on and be a part of a
former health conditioning coach, strength and conditioning coach, power lifter. The guy's got a great history. Guy knows football inside and out, knows recruiting inside and out. Yeah, good one right there for.
And this Oregon fan base, this is a very, very educated and smart fan base. In my opinion. So I think they've come in here and so I think they blend right into the Big Ten, and they've come in here, and that was always kind of I don't want to say concern. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but it was always, I'll just use that for lack of a better term, because I can't think of anything right now, but it's like, how do West Coast teams and their fan bases, specifically for other fans, how do they blend in? Because the Big Ten is all about, we're all about selling out stadiums and tailgates and all this sort of stuff that we're known for, running the football, trench play, bring your lunch pail to work, all that stuff. And when people thought about the West Coast, hey, they think about offense and all this other stuff. But Oregon, I could see they've certainly, their fan base, right, and their environment at Autzen Stadium fits perfectly in to what the Big Ten is all about. Fits into the Horseshoe and the Big House and Camp Randall and all. It's up there, right? It's certainly up there. So yeah, I've been very, very impressed with the Ducks, and they were my preseason pick to win the Big Ten, right? I had Ohio State winning this October 12th matchup and then Oregon winning the rematch. So I will say that to kind of come full circle. I think whoever wins this game, and if these teams rematch, I think the other team is going to win in Indianapolis. So.
Dude, that Walt Disney himself couldn't write a better story than that, Ted.
Absolutely.
I don't know if Walt was a big story writer, but either way, the point's well taken.
I understand what you're saying. Are you going to be last thing? I said last thing about like 45 minutes ago.
Yes.
Are you going to be at College Game Day?
Oh, no, my son will be. I'm driving down that morning. My son is on campus now. My son is a freshman.
He goes to I saw you post about it. He's like
finished his second week. Yeah, or he's in his second week right now. Yeah. He'll be there for sure. He'll be taking pictures. My son actually works for the Big Ten Network now, Ted.
Oh, well.
So
Okay.
if you go to the Big Ten, if you go to the Big Ten Network or Big Ten football or any of that, his pictures will be on that Instagram. There was a picture of Autzen Stadium with like a reflection, like of the cancer thing on the sign with like a pool of water. That was him.
Yep.
Jordan Birch picture, whatever. That was him. That was Darb. So
nice.
Shouts out if you're on here. I got 293 people following right now. Go check out my son, Darby Winter Photo on Instagram, Darby W Photo on Twitter. But Darby is a freshman. He's a photographer. He's a professional photographer. He's now working for the Big Ten Network, and he's gonna be putting out some great photos. He's a freshman, so follow him up. Got another 4 years of on-field action.
I got to send him my stuff because I took photos at that Minnesota-North Carolina game, and I got to see how I thought they were pretty solid.
He'll give you some kudos, or he'll give you some.
Yeah, well, maybe need some work. Maybe need some work. That's probably going to be it. But
well, one of the guys who is his a guy who really is a major influence for him is a guy named Scott Bolt, and if you look him up on Instagram, Scott Bolt, he now works for Colorado. His photos are phenomenal. And Scott really gave Darby kind of the blueprint of what to try to do for a professional photographer. Scott was a J school student at Oregon, worked for Oregon, then went to Washington State, and now he's at Colorado, and he does insane work. So if you want to see kind of like what Darby's looking at for that sort of stuff, that's what it is, man. And then for Oregon, our guy is Jonathan Suni, Suni. Suni Shots is his thing on Instagram. I know you're on Instagram now.
I try. I'm going to try.
Instagram followers, right? But yeah, definitely try to follow my son. My son is definitely a great follow. Darby Winter Photo, Darby Winter, just like the season.
You must be very proud. And
I am very proud. He did a good job. He was a good kid. He was a good student. He was always a good athlete. He was always very coachable. I coached him for basketball through the whole time. I coached him for everything when he was young, but no, he's a very good student. He had great grades. He had great everything. He built his own computer when he's in 5th grade. I mean, the guy is he's one of those kids. So, it's going to be a fun time. It's going to be a great time. This is the biggest game in Autzen Stadium history, and it makes it even bigger because Ruben is going to be in the building, the CEO of Ranchito Grill, just like Captain Hiltz just said right here. Ruben, you better have no voice after the game. Ruben's going to be in the building. He got the $310 or $320 ticket, whatever the hell it was, because that was where it started. But now these tickets are going for like $1,000. So, geez, Pete.
So we're getting breaking news to sign off here. Is Ruben the guest picker on College Game Day?
Yeah!
We're going to leave you with that. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you so much, Ted. Appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Right.
Blessings to you and your family, Ted. See you soon.
All right. We'll see you.
Okay. On that note, people, it has been 2 hours and 11 minutes. Make sure you guys go follow Juckonbucks. Go follow Big Ten Ted. These guys are absolute legends in the game. Absolutely knocked it out of the park, people. 300 people rocking with me right now. Got the Big Ten towel right here. Dana Altman himself gave it to me. I mean, come on. How good is that, right? It is a great time to be alive. If you're a Duck fan, this is our time. This is our time. It's the precursor. Can the Ducks do it? Can the Ducks actually win the day? And if it happens, what happens to this conference? What happens to this team? What happens to this fan base? Do we go completely through the roof? Do we just basically jump into a freaking SpaceX launch pad and just blast off? Or does Big Ten Ted have something on the docket that whoever wins this game might possibly lose the Big Ten championship? What a stinger that would be. Imagine Ohio State winning at Autzen just to have the Ducks come back and beat them in Indianapolis. Enticing. But Oregon did come out of the gates not so great. Ohio State's looked fantastic. This is going to be a fantastic game. It's going to be a freaking amazing one. I will try to go live Friday night pregame if I can. I will try to go live, maybe even pregame before. I'm going to try to get there early. So my goal is to try to get there early if I can. Maybe give some pregame, give some kind of environment-esque stuff. And then, of course, the post game. Everybody's going to want to try to tune into the post game show. I'll be either a range of emotion. I'll be that happy face or the sad face like they have in the drama department. Either way, it's going to be freaking amazing. But if you are in the Eugene Springfield area, get to run Cheeto Grill on Friday night. They're having the party Friday night, and they're going to go in pretty deep. Opportunity is only profitable for those that are ready. Hope your Ducks are ready. Go Ducks, 100%. I wish I could go through the chat completely. I hope for the best for everybody. It's been 2 hours and 15 minutes. I am 4 Coors Lights in, and I have to take a freaking raging piss. So I will see you guys next time. It has been awesome. Continue to get this thing pumped up and fire this thing all the way up. Because we only got one way to go, people. It's Duck fans, baby. And again, to all the Buckeye fans, I'm trying to be very respectful. I think the Ducks have a really good shot here. I just think that it's going to be close in the fourth quarter, and don't let this game be close. Ooh! After about 4 beers, I kind of turn into the Macho Man a little bit. Almost halfway Macho Man. Ooh! When Macho Man would do the Mean Gene Okerlund interviews, and he would kind of get himself worked up a little bit and then take a deep breath. That's what I feel like I'm on right now. I feel like I need to take a deep breath. Oh, well, you know, Mean Gene. I'm going to be so fired up this whole week. I'll try to do videos if I can. If there's anything to update, if there's any other people who want to join in, let's do it. But right now, I got to take the piss. I'll talk to you guys soon. It's always Go Ducks in here, people. Thank you guys so much for watching. Follow my son, Darby Winter Photo, on Instagram. We'll see you guys next time. It's always Go Ducks!